Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Night Fear. I know many of you listen to these stories to help you fall asleep. So, before you get settled in, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. I moved to Maple Hollow after my divorce. It was a small town in Ohio, the kind where everyone waves at you even if they don't know your name. I liked that. I needed quiet. After everything that happened with my marriage falling apart, and my mom passing away the same year, I just wanted a fresh start. The house I rented sat on the edge of town. It was old, maybe 1930s or 40s. White paint peeled from the siding. The porch creaked when I stepped on it. But it was cheap and had character. Plus, it backed up to a thick patch of woods. I thought that might help me feel calm. I work from home, so peace mattered. The neighbors said nobody had lived there long. Just a string of renters who never stayed more than a few months. They'd chuckle and say things like, "Hope you last longer than the last guy." I figured it was just one of those fixer-uppers that scared off people with bad plumbing or mice. For the first few weeks, everything was fine. I'd make coffee in the mornings and sit on the porch with a blanket around my shoulders, watching fog roll in from the woods. The street was mostly quiet except for the occasional mail truck or a kid biking by. Nights were colder than I expected for October. You could hear the wind whistle through the old trees. It was peaceful. Mostly. Then little things started happening. The hallway light would be on in the morning even though I always turned it off. My phone would vibrate once at 3:13 a.m., like a ghost notification, no message, no call, nothing. I tried ignoring it. Told myself I was just stressed, still adjusting. One night, I was brushing my teeth and the bathroom mirror fogged up, nothing new. But this time, I saw a handprint on the glass. Just one. It wasn't mine. It was too small. Like a child's. My heart dropped, but I wiped it off, laughed nervously, and said out loud, "Old pipes, cold air." That's all it is. I stopped sleeping with the hallway light off after that. About a week later, I came home from the grocery store and noticed the front door was unlocked. I was sure I'd locked it. I stood in the driveway for a minute, just staring at the door, trying to breathe. I walked inside holding a can of soup like a weapon. Nothing was taken. Nothing was broken. Just weird. That night, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps above my bedroom. Slow. Creaking floorboards. But I live alone. I froze in bed, pulling the blanket to my chin. The sound moved from one side of the ceiling to the other. It lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then silence. The next morning, I grabbed a flashlight and pulled down the attic ladder. The air up there smelled like dust and mothballs. I looked around, just boxes, old furniture, some broken blinds, and a single rocking chair facing the window. I backed down quickly. The chair still rocked behind me. That same night, I got a phone call from a blocked number. I didn't answer. It left a voicemail. It was just static, but under it, I could hear faint breathing. No voice. Just slow, steady breathing. I deleted it. I blocked the number even though it said unknown. By now, I kept the TV on in the background when I worked. I kept a light on in every room. But the weirdest thing was the mirror. It kept fogging up even when there was no hot water running. And the handprint kept coming back. Sometimes two. Sometimes one. Then came Halloween night. I didn't get any trick-or-treaters. I sat on the porch again, watching the wind scatter dead leaves across the road. The moon was bright. Too bright. Around 10 p.m., I went inside and turned on the hallway light. As I walked past the mirror in the entryway, I stopped cold. There was a face in it. Not mine. A girl. Pale. Thin. Her eyes were too wide. She looked stuck. Like she was behind glass. She mouthed something, but I couldn't hear. I stumbled back and the face was gone. Just me again. Breathing hard. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked the mailman if he knew anything about the house. He looked at me like he'd been waiting for the question. Used to belong to the Wilkins family, he said. Girl went missing back in the 80s. Real mess. Cops searched the woods for weeks. Some folks say she was never found. Others say she's still there. Still there. That night, I sat in front of the mirror with my phone recording. I asked, "Who are you?" No response. Then I whispered, "Are you the girl?" The mirror stayed quiet. But later, when I played the video back, there was a sound. A whisper. Almost impossible to hear. It said, "I'm still here." Now I keep a blanket over every mirror in the house. I moved to Pine Hollow 2 years after my wife passed. It's a small town in upstate New York. Cold winters. Quiet streets. Everyone waves, but no one pries. After 30 years as a city cop, I just wanted peace. I bought a small house at the edge of town. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, and a rusted tin shed out back. It snowed most of that first winter. The kind of snow that falls in silence. Thick and heavy, like the world's trying to smother every sound. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. Or, I thought I did. I spent my evenings reading, drinking coffee, and staring out the window at the trees behind my house. They were tall and still, like they were watching. On most nights, the wind would whistle through the siding. The shed door creaked sometimes too, but I figured it was just the cold warping the wood. One night, just before Christmas, I was watching TV when I noticed a glow in the yard. At first, I thought it was the porch light bouncing off the snow. But no, it was coming from the shed. A faint white light, like someone had turned on a lantern inside. I stared at it for a while. Then stood up, grabbed my coat, and stepped into the cold. My boots crunched through the snow. My breath came out in clouds. The shed was locked. I knew it was locked. I'd checked that latch a dozen times. Still, the light seeped through the cracks in the wood, flickering gently. Might be a short, I muttered to myself. Maybe an old bulb left behind. Maybe I just forgot. I opened the door. Empty. No light inside. No wires. No bulb. Just rusted tools, a broken rake, and the smell of old earth. I stood there for a moment, confused. Then I closed the door and went back inside. I didn't sleep much that night. The next evening, the light was back. Same time. Same glow. I didn't go outside this time. I just watched it from the window, heart thudding in my chest. I wanted to believe it was harmless. Maybe I was tired. Maybe my eyes were playing tricks. But when I turned off the lights in the house and looked again, it was still there, pulsing faintly through the cracks. I grabbed my flashlight and went out again. The shed was locked. Again. I stood in front of it, staring. My hand was shaking when I opened the latch. Darkness. Pure, thick, empty dark. I stepped inside and turned on the flashlight. The beam hit the back wall. Nothing had moved. But the air smelled different, like something had been breathing in there. I backed out slowly and locked the door again. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was grief, stress, or maybe just getting old. But the light kept coming back. Every night. Same time. I stopped going outside. Just stared from the kitchen window with a cold cup of coffee in my hands. Then the whispers started. At first, they were faint, like wind slipping through cracks. But one night, I heard it clear as day. "Come see." A voice. Soft. Low. Just outside my back door. I didn't move. Just stood there frozen, hand tightening around the mug. The voice came again. "Come. See." It wasn't threatening. It was curious. Like it didn't understand why I was afraid. I turned on all the lights in the house. Sat in the living room with the TV blaring until sunrise. That morning, I found the shed door wide open. The snow outside was untouched. No footprints. Nothing. Just the door, swinging gently in the breeze. A few nights later, it called me again. "Tom." I hadn't told anyone my name. Not in town. Not to any neighbors. "Tom, come see." The shed light flickered, brighter this time. Almost warm. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my flashlight and my old service revolver. Stepped out into the snow. My heart thudded like a drum. The shed door was open again. No light now. Just black. I shined my flashlight inside. The beam hit something that hadn't been there before, a mirror, leaning against the back wall. I stepped in. The floor creaked beneath me. The door shut behind me on its own. I turned to face the mirror. At first, I saw my own reflection. Tired. Pale. But then the light came again, from inside the mirror. And something stepped forward. Something that looked like me. Same coat. Same face. But it smiled differently. Its eyes were empty. It raised a hand and beckoned me forward. I don't remember running. But I ended up back in the house, door locked, lights on, heart pounding. I never went back out there again. I put 3 locks on that shed. Chained the door shut. Nailed boards across the inside. I even called a local carpenter to help reinforce it. He asked if I'd seen any raccoons or local kids. I said no. But when he looked inside, he froze. "You said no one comes in here?" "No one," I told him. He pointed to the back wall. There were handprints. Small. Bare. As if a child had pressed their fingers against the inside of the mirror. I don't go near the shed anymore. I planted thorn bushes in front of it. Bought motion lights. Cameras. They never catch anything. But some nights, around the same time, the lights go off. And in the kitchen, I hear a soft knock at the back door. Then the voice again. "Tom, come see." Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. It was mid-November in the small town of Mill Hollow, just past the edge of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Nights got cold fast. The kind of cold that crawled into your sleeves and made the wind sound sharper than it should. Chris had lived there all his life. He worked as a local dispatcher but took night patrol shifts when the force was short. That week, everyone was out sick with a stomach bug, so he volunteered. He didn't mind the quiet. In fact, lately, he needed it. His wife had passed a year ago. Cancer. Quick and cruel. Since then, silence didn't scare him. It comforted him. That Friday, he was doing his rounds in the outskirts, near the old Miller property. The farmhouse had been empty for over 20 years. Kids said it was haunted. Chris didn't believe in that sort of thing, but he respected old places. And the Millers hadn't left it in good shape. He parked by the main gate and stepped out. His boots crunched through dried leaves. The sky was a deep navy. clouds had swallowed the stars. He could see his breath. As he walked along the fence, something caught his eye. A light. It was faint, like a lantern or maybe a phone screen glowing far off inside the trees. At first, he thought maybe it was a hunter. Or maybe teenagers messing around. Either way, he needed to check it out. He called it in through the radio. No response. Just static. Must be the hills, he mumbled. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam cut through the fog that had started to drift in from the creek nearby. The cold smelled like wet wood and smoke. Every step made the forest quieter. He kept walking, the light in the trees getting brighter. And then it blinked. Not like a flashlight. More like a warning. On and off. On and off. He stopped. The hair on his arms lifted. "Anyone out there?" he called. No answer. The wind slowed. The trees didn't move. No bugs. No owls. Just that light. He moved closer. About 50 feet out, he saw it clearly. It wasn't a lantern. It looked like a doorframe. Standing upright. No walls. No roof. Just a doorframe in the middle of the woods, glowing a dull yellow. Like the light you see under a door when someone's still awake inside. Chris blinked. His breath caught in his chest. He stepped forward again. Carefully. One boot in front of the other. There was no sound. Even his steps felt too loud. The frame stood about 7 feet tall. The wood was cracked and wet, but it wasn't rotten. And that light, it was coming from inside the frame. But there was nothing on the other side. No room. Just more forest. He circled it once. It looked the same from every angle. Just a glowing doorway. Chris lifted his radio again. "This is Officer Reynolds. I've got something odd out near the Miller Woods. I need another set of eyes." Still static. He stepped back. His flashlight flickered. Then he heard it. A voice. Soft. Like someone whispering through the trees. "Chris." He froze. "Chris, come in." It was her voice. His wife. He hadn't heard it in over a year. But he knew it. Every vowel. Every breath. "Emily," he whispered. The light in the frame pulsed. He stepped forward again. Slowly. Tears stung his eyes. "Emily, is that you?" The wind picked up just then. His flashlight went out. Everything around him dimmed, except that doorway. And then he saw her. Just for a second. A shadow in the light. Her outline. Her hair. The way she used to stand with her arms folded and her weight on one side. She looked at him. And smiled. Then the light went out. Chris was alone. In the cold. In the dark. His radio crackled. Finally, a voice came through. "Reynolds? You okay? What's your 20?" Chris didn't answer right away. He walked back toward the road in silence, not looking back. The next morning, Chris returned with another officer. The doorframe was gone. No signs of anything, no tracks, no glowing wood, nothing. But Chris knew what he saw. He never reported it officially. He started walking that forest trail every few weeks. Not to investigate. Just in case. He hoped to hear her again. Just once more. But he never did. He kept the shift. He liked the quiet. And sometimes, when the fog rolled in thick and the wind carried the scent of smoke and wet leaves, he'd stop walking and whisper her name. "Emily." And for just a moment, he'd feel less alone. Now let me tell you about one of the most unsettling nights of my life. There's this old, abandoned roadside motel off a forgotten stretch of highway just outside Silver Pines, Colorado. Locals call it the Sierra Pines Inn, though no one stayed there in years. It's been shuttered for over a decade, maybe longer. I've been into solo urban exploring for a while now. I'm usually pretty cautious. I don't go looking for ghosts or anything, I just like the quiet, the decay, the history. And this place? It was on my list for months. I planned my visit at night. Colorado summers can be brutally dry, and the daytime heat makes carrying a backpack around feel like punishment. So I went after midnight. The road was quiet, and getting there was almost too easy. There was no fence to hop, no warning signs, no cameras, no lights. Just a lone, cracked parking lot filled with scattered tumbleweeds and the wind whispering through broken windows. The whole front of the motel was collapsed inward, like time itself had taken a bite out of it. Behind the building was an empty swimming pool, bone-dry, wide, and echoing. Its sides were covered in layers of graffiti. Some of it was artistic, but most of it looked like the fever dreams of someone not quite right in the head. When I aimed my flashlight at the upper floor, I noticed several doors were either cracked open or had no door at all. Just black voids. It gave me pause, but also, I expected this. It's been abandoned forever. I wasn't going to let my nerves ruin the night. I wandered the exterior for a while, careful where I stepped. Glass and splinters were everywhere. The silence was total, no passing cars, no crickets, just the crunch of my own boots. Then I heard it. A voice. A woman's voice, not yelling, just speaking. It sounded close, somewhere near the middle row of rooms. It wasn't angry. But it didn't belong. My stomach dropped. In these situations, I always assume the worst, not ghosts, but people. A security guard, a squatter, someone who might not like me being there. So I did what I usually do, I moved quickly and quietly into one of the downstairs rooms and killed the flashlight. I stood in the dark, my back against the wall, and waited. A minute passed. 2. Nothing. When I felt brave enough, I flicked the flashlight back on low beam and looked around. The room was gutted. Graffiti covered every inch of the walls. On the ground was a moldy mattress and a busted dresser with its drawers either missing or broken off. Everything was coated in dust. For a second, I wondered if anyone could even survive living here. It was so far from town, so dry, so dead. But still, maybe. I left that room and moved on, working my way along the bottom level. I peered into each doorway I passed. They were all nearly identical, trashed furniture, scattered debris, black mold eating the corners of the ceilings. Then I heard a crash from above. It was sudden. Sharp. Not wind. Not a bird. My heart skipped. I aimed the flashlight toward the upstairs walkway. One of the upper rooms. Broken glass. Still no movement. I hesitated for a second, then climbed the stairs slowly. My instinct said animal, maybe a raccoon or a stray dog. But there's always the risk of someone else being up there. Another explorer. Or someone living off the grid. Each room I passed was just like the others. Sagging beds. Broken chairs. Old magazines disintegrating on the floor. But as I walked further along the second-story walkway, I heard something else. A sound. Thump. 2 seconds. Thump. 2 seconds. Thump. Steady. Intentional. Not random. It was coming from the far end of the floor. One of the last rooms. I approached slowly. The sound kept going, each thud hollow and rhythmic. My skin felt tight. I called out softly, "Hello? I'm just exploring, I don't want any trouble." The noise stopped. Silence again. I reached the doorway and peered in with my flashlight off. It was pitch black. But I swear I saw a shape. Not moving. Just standing at the far wall. It looked like a person. And the smell. The room reeked like rot, sweat, and something worse. Something sharp and sickening. Feces, maybe. I pulled back and looked down to angle my flashlight on low, trying not to beam it directly inside. Then slowly, I raised it toward the room again. And froze. Two pale, bare feet. Walking toward me fast. I reflexively lifted the light. What I saw nearly made me scream. It was a woman. Her face was twisted in some frozen scream. Her mouth hung open, and something yellow oozed from her lips. Her forehead was split, bleeding down her face in slow rivulets. Her eyes looked past me, like I wasn't even real. She was coming straight at me. I turned and ran. Her scream followed me down the stairs. Not a normal scream, something animal. Garbled. It echoed off the broken walls like it belonged to a different world. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I didn't look back. Just slammed the door and floored it. When I was a few miles away and finally sure I wasn't being followed, I called my friend George. He's into this stuff too. I'd originally asked him to come with me, but he couldn't make it. I told him everything. His theory chilled me even more than the event itself. He thought the banging sound, the one I heard before I approached the room, was her. Banging her head against the wall. Over and over. That's why her forehead looked the way it did. I considered calling the cops. Not for her, but just to get someone out there. That place wasn't safe. But George reminded me that if I did, I'd be admitting to trespassing on private property. Not great. Still, I felt guilty. I ended up driving to a nearby strip mall and circling around, hoping I'd find a payphone. Figured I'd report it anonymously. But of course, payphones don't really exist anymore. Eventually, I called the non-emergency line from my cell. I told them someone else had found her. Said I'd heard from someone online about a dangerous woman in the motel ruins. I gave them the location, then hung up. I don't know what became of her. But sometimes, when I lie in bed late at night, I hear that sound again in my mind. Thump. 2 seconds. Thump. What do you think she was doing there? And why did she chase me? Would you have gone into that room? Let me start by saying I was deliberately vague on the 911 call. I didn't want to stick around long enough to give them details. I still don't know if anyone ever went out there to investigate. But whatever was going on with that man, he needed to be in a psychiatric facility. And I say that with the utmost seriousness. I've done a lot of urban exploration over the years. But nothing, absolutely nothing, has ever shaken me like that night. This all happened when I was about 15, back when my family lived in a quiet part of northern Alabama. After some heavy family drama, my parents decided we needed a reset and started looking for homes farther north in Tennessee. One weekend while they were out of town house hunting, I invited my buddy Tyler over. We were both into spooky adventures and dumb enough to chase them. I also called up my cousins Ben and Lucas, who lived about an hour away. We figured we'd take a late-night road trip. Just us boys, doing something we probably shouldn't. We settled on an abandoned psychiatric hospital called Ashpine State Asylum, a crumbling relic about 3 hours west. It had all the makings of the perfect horror spot deep in the woods, no working lights, no neighbors for miles. According to old news articles and local rumors, the facility was shut down decades ago after serious allegations of abuse and patient neglect. Word was, things got dark in there. Patients left alone in rooms for weeks. Strange disappearances. Maybe even worse. We had no idea how true the stories were, but we wanted to find out. We left around 11 p.m., loaded up on gas station snacks and energy drinks, blasting music the whole way. The vibe was electric. Nervous, but excited. We got there just before 2:45 a.m. The GPS led us down an unmarked gravel road swallowed by overgrowth. We parked at the start of the old driveway and killed the engine. For a long moment, none of us moved. The road ahead was a tunnel of black. Our headlights showed nothing but tall grass and broken branches. It felt wrong. Not scary movie wrong, viscerally wrong. Eventually, Tyler broke the silence. Let's just go. We didn't come all this way for nothing. So we did. The drive-in felt endless. Twigs snapped under the tires. The forest closed in tighter the farther we went. Finally, we came to a clearing, and there it was. The ash pine building was massive, like something out of a Cold War thriller. The roof had half caved in. Vines draped over shattered windows. Moss grew on the bricks like a slow infection. A decaying stone fountain sat in the middle of what used to be a parking lot, choked with weeds and vines. We left the car and stood in the cold, just staring at it. None of us spoke. Then we started walking. Inside, the place was wrecked. Graffiti covered the walls, some of it harmless, some of it not. Pentagrams, warnings scrawled in red spray paint, strange symbols I couldn't recognize. The floors groaned beneath our feet. Dust hung in the air like breath on a cold night. We made our way up a flight of half-collapsed stairs and climbed what was left of a metal ladder to the upper floor. From there, we could see the outline of the forest stretching forever in every direction. That's when we noticed a faint light. Just past the broken front entrance, a beam, like a phone flashlight, blinked on and off. We called out. "Hello?" No answer. The light vanished like it had never been there. Ben wanted to check it out. He said he just wanted to make sure we weren't alone up here. Maybe another group of explorers. I wasn't convinced. Something in me screamed not to follow. Instead, I slipped off into a different hallway nearby. It was quieter. Just me, some busted doors, and moldy mattresses on the floor. That's when I heard it. A small clink, like a pebble or rock tapping the glass of the window behind me. I turned fast. Nothing was there. I went back to find the others. We regrouped and decided to head to the basement, because of course we did. The stairs down were practically rubble, so we had to climb over debris and broken beams just to reach the bottom. Once there, we stopped to catch our breath. That's when we heard the voice. It wasn't yelling or screaming. Just a whisper. Low, deliberate, coming from the far end of the basement. We all froze. No one said a word. I couldn't even breathe right. The air felt thick. Ben slowly stepped toward the noise, his flashlight shaking in his grip. He aimed the beam toward the far wall, and there was someone crouched in the corner. Facing the wall. Perfectly still. Ben stepped back without breaking eye contact. I remember how slow and careful his movements were. Like if he moved too fast, that thing would pounce. Once we were back by the broken staircase, Ben helped push each of us up one by one, his eyes never leaving the figure. As he pulled himself up last, he shouted, "Hey! Are you okay?" The man turned. His face was pale, eyes wide open, lips twitching. He stared right through us. Then, he screamed. Loud, raw, animalistic. And then, he ran. Straight at us. We bolted. We didn't care where we were going. We climbed out of a busted window and spilled into the woods behind the asylum. Trees whipped past me. I could barely see anything but the flickering light from Lucas's flashlight ahead of me. Branches slashed my arms and face. I tripped twice. Maybe more. Eventually, we made it into a small clearing and tried to catch our breath. Nobody spoke. All I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding like a war drum. We found a trail and followed it, but it led us deeper into the woods. After almost an hour, we realized we were going the wrong way. We turned around, dead tired, scratched and sore, and eventually found the asylum again, eerily still under the night sky. Relieved, we ran toward the car. That's when we heard the rustling. From the bushes near the building, a rock flew and struck Tyler on the shoulder. We spun, and the man was there, crawling out of the shrubbery like something from a nightmare. We ran harder than before. He chased us, but thankfully he was slower now. We made it to the car, yanked open the doors, slammed them shut, and locked everything. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely fit the key into the ignition. The headlights clicked on. He was standing right in front of the car, holding a glass bottle. His mouth was moving, but no sound came out. Then he screamed again and lunged at the windshield. I hit the gas. We didn't speak the entire drive back. The car was filled with silence and something else. Something that felt like it clung to our skin. I could feel my heart pounding for hours after. We never went urban exploring again. Not after that night. It happened just outside a place called Riverton, Alabama. I'll never forget it. I was 15. My brother Seb was 18. And none of us were ever the same again. I don't usually go poking around abandoned places, but my brother, Ethan, was obsessed with that kind of thing. Old hospitals, shuttered schools, forgotten houses, he thought they were gold mines for adventure. One chilly afternoon, he mentioned this huge, rundown house out past Willow Creek, a sleepy little town with more pine trees than people. Said a guy from his night shift told him about it. Naturally, he didn't want to check it out alone. So, he dragged me along. Ethan parked the car off a narrow gravel shoulder, half hidden beneath overgrown trees. You couldn't even see the house from where we parked. We had to walk a cracked, weed-choked asphalt path that looked like it hadn't seen a car in 20 years. Tall grass pushed in from both sides like the road was being swallowed whole. We were barely a minute in when I noticed a woman walking behind us, coming from the same direction we had. I tapped Ethan's shoulder, whispering, "Should we say something?" He kept walking, kept his voice low. "Just play it cool. If we start running, that looks sketchy." She was strolling with her hands clasped behind her back, like she was enjoying a sunset walk in a park. We picked up our pace just a little, not enough to look panicked, but enough to create space. When I glanced back again, she was a lot closer. I could see her face now. She was smiling, but not in a way that felt normal. She locked eyes with me and said, "Lovely day today, isn't it?" We both replied, almost in unison, "Yeah." She kept following. No faster, just closer. Still with that strange smile. And then, in the same breezy tone, she said, "I have to go to bed now." Ethan and I exchanged a look. Nothing needed to be said. We both picked up the pace, quietly but urgently. He gave her one last glance over his shoulder and muttered, "Have a great day, ma'am." We speed-walked in silence. No footsteps behind us. When we finally looked back again, she was gone. Not just farther away, gone. Nowhere on the road. She must have veered into the thick woods. That unsettled us more than anything. Who just steps into the trees like that? Still, we pressed on. The house was in rough shape, no surprise there. Ivy crawled up the brick walls, and several windows were shattered. Some were boarded up. It was clear we weren't the first ones here. We found a loose panel by a broken window and slipped inside, careful not to catch ourselves on the jagged glass. We stepped into what used to be a living room. To our surprise, a lot of stuff was still there. Worn-out couches, an old coffee table, dusty picture frames still hanging crookedly. We checked out the kitchen and even peeked inside the refrigerator. The door creaked open and a wave of decay hit us like a punch. Rotten food, moldy, liquefied, unrecognizable. I gagged and slammed it shut. After clearing the first floor, we made our way to the basement. It was dimly lit by a few small windows near the ceiling. The air was musty. Carpet, faded blue, fraying at the corners, was half covered with old newspapers, bits of trash, and scattered belongings. A broken rocking chair sat in the corner like someone had just left it mid-motion. Then we heard it, a loud, clear thump from upstairs. We froze. No one moved. No one breathed. After what felt like a year but was probably just 10 seconds, Ethan said, "Old houses make sounds." But neither of us believed it. There wasn't much else to find in the basement, so we headed back upstairs. Only one area left to check, the second floor. The staircase creaked under our feet. At the top, a dusty bathroom sat directly in front of us. To the left, a narrow hallway led to a half-open door and then curved sharply out of sight. We turned left. The first room was a small bedroom. Not the master, just something modest. A double bed. An antique dresser. Some faded clothes still tucked in the drawers. I didn't touch anything. The whole space felt frozen in time, like its owner had just vanished. Ethan stepped out first. Then I heard him say my name, low and tight, like he didn't want to say it at all. I stepped into the hallway and looked where he was staring. At the far end of the hallway, in another bedroom, stood the same woman from before. Same smile. Same eerie stillness. She was framed in the soft light leaking through a broken curtain, just standing there by the bed. Then she said it. "Do you want to see what's behind my back?" Ethan didn't wait. He shouted, "Screw you," and shoved me hard. We bolted. Racing down the stairs, tripping over ourselves, flying through the front door. I couldn't stop myself from glancing back at the second-floor windows, half expecting her face to be there, watching. But there was nothing. No shadow. No movement. We didn't slow down until we hit the road again. And even then, we didn't stop running. My lungs were burning. I wanted to throw up. My legs were jelly. But we didn't stop until the car was in sight. Ethan barely waited for me to catch my breath before firing up the engine. We peeled out of there, gravel spraying behind the tires. Neither of us spoke for the first 10 minutes of the drive. Finally, he broke the silence. Maybe she was just off. Like, escaped from somewhere. Maybe she was just squatting in the house. Maybe she's not even dangerous. Maybe, I said. But I didn't believe it. Because here's the part one can't stop thinking about. She had her hands behind her back. The entire time. What was she holding? And when did she start following us? Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Starting a new job is always a weird mix of nerves and excitement. When I picked up a summer gig at a traveling carnival just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, I was honestly just looking to save up some money before senior year kicked off in the fall. The setup was standard Ferris wheel, corn dog stands, cheesy game booths, but the real headliner was the funhouse. Thing was, this funhouse wasn't your average pop-up. It was built into what used to be a rundown colonial mansion. Locals said it once belonged to a Civil War-era family that just vanished. Now it had been gutted and rigged with mirrors, strobe lights, jump scares, and a haunted overlay once the sun went down. I got assigned to monitor the funhouse. Easy gig. Let people in, watch the security cam feed, and make sure nobody punched an actor or got stuck in a spinning barrel. At first, everything ran smooth. Until the numbers started getting weird. I'd log 12 people going in, and 11 would walk out. Maybe I just miscounted? It was chaos in there, screaming, laughter, those shrill motion-triggered animatronics. Still, it kept happening. 9 went in. 8 came out. Always just one off. And the weird part? Nobody complained about missing friends. They just laughed, bought cotton candy, and moved on. I tried brushing it off. Until one muggy Friday evening. That's when she showed up. She walked up alone, maybe mid-20s, with this effortless kind of beauty that didn't quite match the sticky, plastic vibe of the carnival. Blonde, sharp features, dressed in vintage denim and a faded band tee. I remember thinking she looked more like she was headed to an indie concert, not a ghost train. She handed me her ticket, smiled, and disappeared into the dark entrance. I kept an eye out after that. Not to be creepy, I swear. Just curious. But after 10 minutes, groups who entered after her were already spilling back out into the night. She didn't. I waited longer. Nothing. Worried now, I closed the velvet rope, flipped the temporarily closed sign, and slipped inside. I'd been through the place a dozen times by then. Knew every corner, every actor, every exit route. But that night, as I passed through the mirror maze, something caught my eye. On the far wall, barely visible behind a fake cobweb, was a vertical seam. I leaned in. Gave it a little push. Click. The panel creaked open, revealing a narrow hallway swallowed in darkness. My first thought? Fire code violation. My second? This wasn't on the blueprints. I clicked on my phone's flashlight and stepped inside. The passage snaked around behind the mirror maze, cutting through the mansion's original interior. At the far end, I found another door. When I opened it, cool night air spilled in. It was a hidden exit tucked between two fried dough carts behind the funhouse. I exhaled, half laughing. That's it. That's where the missing guests had gone. They probably stumbled out the wrong way and just wandered off. Still, the girl hadn't come through. And something about that bugged me. I turned back into the funhouse, figuring I'd make one more loop before reopening. Maybe she doubled back. Maybe she panicked and took a wrong turn. That's when I found the second seam. This one was lower on the wall and set beside a crate of prop skulls. When I pushed, the wall opened inward this time. What greeted me made me step back. Rot. The stench slapped me across the face like spoiled meat and wet carpet. There wasn't a hallway this time, just a hole. A vertical shaft, with a rusty ladder leading down. I hesitated. This place wasn't supposed to have a basement. The staff handbook had floor plans, no mention of anything underground. But that smell, and the thought of her possibly being down there. I couldn't ignore it. I gripped the ladder and started climbing. Every step groaned. The air got colder and thicker with each foot down. When my boots hit the floor, I was in some kind of tunnel. Not a basement. A tunnel. Carved out earth and old brick lined the narrow path. Water dripped from somewhere above, and the air tasted like mold and rust. There were no carnival props down here, no lights, no music, no screams. Just silence. My flashlight flickered. I stepped forward carefully, scanning the ground. That's when I saw it. A purse. Small, white, and glittery. I knelt down. The clasp was broken, and one strap had a frayed edge. I'd seen that purse. She had it slung over her shoulder when she walked in. My throat tightened. I turned around, looking for any sign of her. Nothing. Every cell in my body screamed to get out. Instead, I did something incredibly stupid. I called out. Hey! Are you down here? My voice bounced off the damp walls and disappeared into the tunnel. Silence. I took a few more steps. The ground squished beneath my shoes. The walls were closing in now, and I started to hear something, maybe dripping water. Or footsteps. Or whispers. It was hard to tell. Then, a distant sound. A faint click. Like a latch being thrown. I spun around. The ladder? The door? I called out again, louder this time. Hello? Are you okay? Still nothing. Then I saw something that didn't make sense. Carved into the wall, just beyond the beam of my flashlight, were rows of marks. Deep scratches. Like someone had scraped the bricks with their fingers. 5 lines over and over again, in sets of 5. Dozens of them. Hundreds. My chest tightened. The air felt heavier now. And suddenly, the smell wasn't just rot, it was sweet. Sickly sweet. Like decaying flowers. I knew I had to leave. I turned to go back the way I came, and then froze. Footsteps. Soft. Deliberate. Coming from behind me. But when I turned, the tunnel was empty. That was the moment I realized I wasn't alone down there. I waited in the pitch-dark corridor. Nothing. I was just about to shout again when the sound of quick, pounding footsteps echoed through the underground. My gut reaction was to run. Whoever was sprinting toward me probably wasn't coming with good intentions. I spun around and bolted back toward the rusty ladder. I'd only made it halfway up when my foot slipped on a wet rung. I crashed hard onto the concrete below, knocking the wind out of me. The footsteps were closing in fast. I thought it was over. Then a voice rang out, breathless, panicked. A girl's voice. "Help me," she gasped, clutching her side like she was hurt. I yelled at her to climb up, but she insisted I follow her deeper into the dark, mumbling something I couldn't quite make out. I wasn't having any of it. I practically shoved her toward the ladder and forced her to go first. We scrambled out together, and I slammed the storm door shut behind us. Back on the surface, under the glow of a flickering porch light, I asked her how in the hell she'd ended up down there. But she didn't have a clear answer. Said she didn't remember. Just that she came to and realized she was underground. Said she heard things moving in the dark. Voices whispering her name. I tried to process that, but none of it made sense. I asked if someone had lured her down there, and she just shook her head with a vacant stare. That stare chilled me more than anything else. She looked empty. I asked her again why she begged me to stay down there. She didn't answer. Just kept looking past me like I wasn't even there. That's when I knew I had to get away from her. I called the police. She refused to wait around and disappeared into the night before they showed up. I never saw her again. The police ran an investigation. What they discovered was downright crazy. That creepy funhouse had apparently been a Prohibition-era safehouse back in the 1920s. Hidden tunnels, secret passageways, it was part of a larger underground network no one had touched in nearly a century. The owner of the place claimed he had no idea about the history. I didn't buy it. I quit my job the next day and left that town behind. But the questions still haunt me. Did the owner know what was under that house? Was that girl abducted? Drugged? Was she trying to lure me into something? Or was she part of it? I don't know what's worse, that there might have been someone else down there, or that she wasn't human at all. And the weirdest part? I still love carnivals. Even after everything. Ever since I was a kid, carnivals were my escape. The lights, the music, the fried food, something about the chaos always felt like magic. Growing up in the quiet town of Oak Hollow, Kentucky, there wasn't much to do. So whenever a carnival rolled through, it was like the world lit up for a weekend. I'd beg my mom to let me spend all my allowance on ring toss and corn dogs. That joy never really went away. I was about 10 or 11 the spring it happened. Still that nerdy kid who loved trivia books and random collectibles. I spent a lot of my time at the local library, a cozy red brick building near the old courthouse. It was the kind of place where the books smelled like 100 years of quiet. One rainy afternoon, I ended up in the local history section. Dust blanketed the shelves like snow. I pulled out a thick book on Oak Hollow's founding years, flipped it open, and something slipped out from between the pages. It was a small, faded ticket. A spring carnival ticket dated May 3, 1987, over 15 years ago. The colors were faded, the edges worn soft, but the logo was the same. My heart did this weird little skip. I loved finding things like this. It felt like a secret from the past just for me. What made it even cooler? The date on the ticket was just 2 days away. That spring's carnival was set to arrive Friday night. The next morning, the trucks rolled into town, colorful, loud, familiar. Cotton candy clouds floated above the fairground, and the Ferris wheel rose like a giant crown against the overcast sky. That evening, I slid the old ticket into my jacket pocket and headed for the entrance. I figured I'd hand it to the booth guy just to see what he'd say. Maybe he'd laugh, maybe he'd keep it as a keepsake. Either way, I wanted to try. But the reaction I got? Not what I expected. The man at the booth, late 30s, sunglasses even though it was dusk, took one look at the ticket and went pale. His mouth parted slightly. Eyes wide. Then, like flipping a switch, he forced a crooked smile and handed it back. Enjoy your evening, he muttered. No stamp. No tear. No joke. Just that. I stood there, confused. Didn't even think to argue. I walked in slowly, looking over my shoulder. Something was off. Everything looked normal on the surface. The blinking lights, the sound of laughter, the smells of roasted peanuts and funnel cakes. But I felt eyes on me. Constantly. At first, I brushed it off as my imagination. But then I noticed it, how some of the workers kept staring. Not glaring, just watching. Especially the older ones. Like they recognized me. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over to the ring toss stand, where an elderly man with a white beard and a crooked ball cap sat quietly watching the crowd. I showed him the ticket. He froze. His hands trembled just slightly as he took it from me, inspecting the corners like it might fall apart. Then he looked at me. Really looked. "Young man," he asked, voice low, "where'd you get this?" I told him about the library, the dusty old book. As I spoke, his eyes grew glassy. He glanced around like he was checking if anyone was listening. "You weren't supposed to find this," he whispered. I asked what he meant. He leaned in, his voice barely audible now. "That ticket, it belonged to someone who disappeared here. The carnival used to have a different name back then. There were stories. Folks who bought a certain kind of ticket, well, they never came home." I blinked. "Like, kidnapped?" He didn't answer. Just handed the ticket back and said, "Go home. And don't use that thing again." Even now, I still wonder. Was it a cursed ticket? Did I step into something meant for someone else? Or was it just a strange coincidence that spiraled out of control? I haven't been back to Oak Hollow's carnival since that night. But every now and then, when I hear the faint jingle of carousel music on the wind, I think of that old man's eyes. And the way he never looked away. Let me tell you a story I've never fully shaken. About 15 years ago, something awful happened during the annual harvest fair in Pine Hollow, the town where I grew up. It was one of those cozy little places nestled between hills and fir trees, where everybody knows your name and where the same fair rolled in every fall, right before Halloween. There was a kid who worked the rides, the old man said, his voice gravelly like he'd smoked too much or seen too much, or both. Name was Ryan. Nice guy. Local. Everyone liked him. He paused, staring at the damp ground like it might answer for him. One night, he just vanished. I shifted uncomfortably on the old wooden bench as he continued. They searched everywhere. His wallet was found near the edge of the corn maze. Nothing in it. Except a single ticket. One that looked an awful lot like the one you've got in your hand right now. He nodded at the damp, yellowing ticket I'd pulled from the gravel. Something about the way the ink shimmered under the fairground lights made my skin prickle. The temperature around us seemed to drop a few degrees. They even drained the pond near the north field. Never found a trace of him. After that, strange things started happening every time the fair came to town: rides malfunctioning, lights going out, animals spooked, kids getting lost. Some said it was Ryan. Others whispered that whatever took him came back every year, looking for more. A shiver danced down my spine, but I rolled my eyes. "And you believe all that?" I asked, only half mocking. The old man shrugged, but his eyes stayed on the ticket. "I've seen enough to keep an open mind. But here's what matters: you should get rid of that thing. Leave it here." He held out his hand. I hesitated. Something about his urgency made my stomach knot. I looked down at the ticket again, squinting at the faded letters, wondering what made it so different. How can a ticket be cursed? I muttered. His face darkened. "Give it to me," he said, low and sharp, almost a growl. I backed away instinctively, holding the ticket close. His whole demeanor shifted, less like a concerned elder and more like something hungry. His eyes darted toward the shadows behind us. "You don't understand," he whispered. "You really don't want to keep that." I didn't say another word. I turned and slipped out of the tent, the humid night air hitting me like a slap. Behind me, I heard him shout after me, part warning, part plea, but I let the crowd swallow his voice. The fair wasn't fun anymore. I left earlier than I'd planned, the ticket burning in my pocket like it knew I was trying to ignore it. That's when things started to go sideways. First, I missed my school bus twice in the same week. Then I took a nasty fall off my bike and tore up my knee. My best friend, Tyler, accused me of stealing his rare signed baseball card, something I'd never do. He stopped talking to me for days. It didn't stop there. My mom came home crying one afternoon after getting laid off. My younger brother snapped his leg trying to skateboard off the back porch. And then, our golden retriever, Dusty, passed in his sleep, no warning, no signs. It felt like something had curled around our house and was squeezing. One gray afternoon, after a rough day where I forgot my lunch and got caught in the rain walking home, I decided I'd had enough. I pulled out the ticket, soaked through with guilt, anger, and whatever invisible weight it carried. I shoved it into my pocket and marched out to the creek that ran behind our house. The sky was bruised and gray. Cold rain dripped from the trees, soaking my hoodie as I reached the edge of the rushing water. I stared at the ticket one last time, half expecting it to pulse or whisper or crumble in my hand. Then I ripped it to shreds and let the wind and water take it. I didn't think it would matter. But after that, things changed. Tyler found his card wedged behind his dresser. He apologized. We went back to being inseparable. I stopped missing the bus. My mom got a new job, better pay, better hours. My brother got his cast off and started laughing again. Coincidence? Maybe. But I never forgot the look in that old man's eyes, or how the air felt around that ticket. I learned not to pick up things that don't belong to me. Especially things that look too old or too perfect. My parents still say I was just a kid with an overactive imagination. Maybe they're right. But I've never liked carnivals since. I hate the smell of funnel cake and grease. I hate the sound of laughter echoing under flickering lights. I hate the prizes, the crowds, the forced cheer. My younger sister, Lily, once begged me to take her to the new fair set up near the high school football field. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't say no. So I went. It was pathetic. Half the booths were empty, the music was off-key, and the workers looked like they hadn't slept in days. Lily got bored quickly and called Mom to pick her up. I told them I'd stay behind and walk home later. I didn't want to go back yet. Dad and I had been fighting a lot that week, and I didn't want to see him. So I stayed. And the second they drove off, I felt that familiar heaviness return. Like the air wasn't quite right. Like something was watching. Like history had circled back around, and was waiting. I figured I might as well walk around a bit and get my money's worth. After all, I'd paid for the fare ticket myself, wasn't even planning to come until my buddy bailed last minute. I figured I'd check out the funhouse. At the very least, it might be a little entertaining. I expected it to be packed with people laughing, goofing around, but it was completely empty. Not a single other person in sight. I'd never been in a funhouse alone before, and it didn't feel right. People don't realize how important the noise is, the laughter, the voices echoing down the mirrored halls. Without it, you're just standing there in dead silence, surrounded by warped reflections and buzzing lights. The whole vibe was off. Creepy, even. Still, I shrugged it off and decided to walk through. The distorted mirrors did make me laugh a bit, especially one that made me look like I had marshmallow legs and no neck. I was probably halfway through when I saw something strange. In one of the mirrors to my left, there was a reflection of a man's face, bald, pale, with deep-set, hollow eyes, just watching me. I spun around, startled. But no one was there. It was impossible to tell where he might have been standing. With all the mirrors bouncing light and images around, he could have been anywhere. What made it worse, I never heard the entrance open. No footsteps. Nothing. Either he slipped in quietly behind me, or he'd already been in there. Hiding. I kept moving, now with a little more urgency. But then I saw him again, just at the edge of my vision. Same face, only this time, he was grinning. Not in a friendly way. It was twisted. Deranged. I froze and tried to trace the angle to see where he might actually be standing. But it was useless. The mirrors were too confusing. I shouted out, telling him to back off. No response. Not sure what I expected. I picked up the pace, but navigating that maze of mirrors was harder than I remembered. I kept hitting dead ends, doubling back, glancing behind me every few steps. Sweat beaded at the back of my neck. My breathing quickened. It felt like the walls were closing in. Then, after rounding a sharp corner, just as I hit another dead end, something reached out from behind one of the mirrors and grabbed my wrist. I screamed. The grip was tight. Too tight. I cursed, trying to break free. He didn't say a word. I punched at his arm with everything I had, and finally, he let go. I stumbled to the ground but got a full look at him this time. He wore a gray hoodie, stretched tight around his middle, and had that same exhausted, dead-eyed stare. His skin looked waxy, his mouth slightly open like he was about to speak, but didn't. I bolted. Didn't even think. My legs moved on instinct, and somehow I found my way back toward the entrance faster than I thought possible. Maybe it was adrenaline, maybe just dumb luck. I burst out of the funhouse and sucked in the night air like I'd been underwater. My hands were shaking as I reached for my back pocket, and then it hit me. My wallet was gone. I must have dropped it when I fell. There was no way I was going back in there. Not a chance. I sprinted over to the nearest fair worker, a teenage girl in a yellow security vest, and told her everything, fast and panicked. She looked at me like I was making the whole thing up. Then she said something that chilled me even more. The funhouse isn't open tonight. What? She radioed it in, and eventually, local cops showed up. They checked the place, top to bottom. Found nothing. No man. No signs of a break-in. Not even my wallet. I told them it had to be someone with a key, an ex-employee maybe. They didn't buy it. Just told me to go home, take it easy. So that's what I did. I wasn't hurt. Shaken, sure. But not hurt. I wish I could say the story ended there. But it didn't. A week later, I got a call from my girlfriend, middle of the night, frantic. She was crying, barely able to form words. Said someone had been texting her, pretending to be me. Told her I had a flat tire and needed help out on some back road off the interstate. Gave her exact GPS coordinates. The only reason she didn't go alone was because her dad insisted on tagging along. Good thing, too. When they pulled into the empty lot, it was dark. Foggy. The kind of place you see in crime documentaries. And the car parked there? Not mine. As her dad stepped out of the car to get a better look, 6 guys climbed out of the other vehicle. He didn't wait. Slammed the door shut and peeled out of there like his life depended on it. It probably did. Everything clicked in my head. My girlfriend's number had been written on a slip of paper in my wallet. That's how they found her. We changed all our contact info the next day. Phone numbers, email, everything. It's been quiet since then. A month of silence. No calls. No texts. No strange shadows in mirrors. But I still think about it. A lot. And I don't think I'll ever go near a funhouse again. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. It was Memorial Day weekend, and my group of friends decided to rent a lakefront cabin in northern Vermont, about 3 hours from where we lived. The place was cheap, probably because it was buried deep in the middle of nowhere. It was me, Sarah, Ben, Crystal, Jason, and Emily. We loaded up Ben's pickup and hit the road. I was the one who found the listing on Airbnb. What sold me was the wraparound deck with a hot tub overlooking the lake. There was a fire pit just a few steps from the water, surrounded by those old wooden Adirondack chairs. Everything about it felt like the perfect setup for a weekend of unwinding and partying, no responsibilities, no internet, just us in the woods. The host mentioned there was a hidden key taped behind the mailbox to unlock the main gate. Once we found it, we drove up a gravel path that curved through thick pines and climbed slightly uphill until we reached an open clearing. The house sat there quietly, tucked between trees with the lake shimmering behind it. Ben parked right by the front porch. The deck wrapped around the whole cabin, and everything looked just as cozy as the photos promised. I walked straight to the back, leaned on the railing, and took in the view. It was stunning. Quiet. Peaceful. Too bad we were about to disturb that peace. Within minutes of unpacking, everyone had a drink in hand. Beer pong, cornhole, music. By nightfall, we were loud and carefree. There were no neighboring houses for what seemed like miles, and our phones barely had service. Honestly, it felt good to disconnect. Then came the voice. We were all gathered around the fire pit as night settled in. The flames crackled, and laughter echoed under the stars. That's when we heard a woman's voice, sharp and angry, from the edge of the woods. She stepped out from the shadows. A middle-aged woman, short hair, a faded hoodie, and jeans smeared with dirt. She shouted at us to turn the music down. We paused, glancing at each other. Jason lowered the volume. The woman didn't stop there. She launched into a rant about tourists ruining the lake, how outsiders trashed the water, made noise, and disrespected the area. I tried to apologize, but Emily asked her if she lived nearby. The woman snapped back that she couldn't even hear herself think. But she never answered the question about whether she lived around there. And then, she turned and walked straight back into the woods. No flashlight. No path. Just into the dark. We waited a few seconds before bursting into laughter. It was too strange not to. We joked about her, but I could feel a thin layer of unease settle over the group. Maybe we weren't as isolated as we thought. Still, the beers kept flowing, and we let the tension slip away. Hours passed. Music played. The fire dimmed. Then, something made us pause. A faint voice carried over the water. At first, we thought it was the music echoing off the lake. But no, it was someone shouting. A man's voice. He was calling for help. We stood. Quiet. Listening. Help, please. The voice was coming from the lake. I called out, "Hey! Are you out there? Are you in the water?" "Yes." "Help," came the reply, panicked and weak. Ben and I grabbed the kayak resting beside the dock. There were 2 paddles. We jumped in and started rowing toward the sound. We called out again, but the voice always seemed just out of reach. The further we paddled, the more distant it sounded, like it was drifting away on purpose. About 10 minutes out, the lake was pitch black. Only the faint glow of the cabin lights guided us. No stars. No moon. Just silence. Water lapping gently against the kayak. Then, screams. High-pitched, terrified screams. They came from the direction of the cabin. Women screaming, more than one. We froze. Then Ben shouted, "They're in trouble," and we turned the kayak around as fast as we could. By the time we reached shore, everything had gone silent again. We ran up the hill, shouting for our friends Sarah, Crystal, Emily, but the cabin was empty. Every door open. No signs of struggle. But no sign of them either. They were gone. We tried calling them, but none of us had a signal. Ben's truck was still there. So we jumped in and sped down the road, looking for help. After about a mile, we spotted another opening through the trees that led to a lit-up house. We ran up the driveway and rang the doorbell over and over. Nothing. I peeked through the window, and my blood ran cold. There she was. The same woman from the woods. Standing in the middle of the living room, under the glow of a single lamp. Just staring. Her expression was stiff, almost angry, and her eyes locked with mine through the glass. We yelled for help, but she didn't move. Didn't blink. Ben tugged my arm, and we backed away. We didn't know what kind of nightmare we had just stepped into. As we climbed back into the truck, my phone buzzed. A call from Jason. I answered in relief. "Where are you? What happened?" His voice was frantic. 2 guys came out of the woods, masks, axes. That's why the girl screamed. We ran. We're hiding in the trees down the road. Emily's calling 911. Then the call dropped. We drove slowly along the road until we spotted them waving us down from the trees. We pulled over and they rushed into the truck, shaking and breathless. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights filled the road. The police listened to our story, and we returned to the cabin together. We packed up everything in a frenzy. Strangely, the cabin hadn't been broken into. Nothing was missing. No sign of anyone having been inside. The police began searching the area and called in backup to scan the lake. We told them about the cries for help we heard, the reason we'd left in the kayak. By the time the search team arrived, we were gone. We didn't care about the hot tub or the money. We just wanted out. After a few heated back and forths with the Airbnb host, we got most of our refund. But we never figured it out. Were the cries from the lake a trap? Were the masked men waiting for us to leave the house? And that woman, was she part of it all? We still don't know. But I'll never rent another cabin in the woods again. Not after that. Have you ever had a trip that went from peaceful to terrifying in a blink? It happened over Memorial Day weekend, 2021. The country was still catching its breath from the pandemic. Everyone was eager to celebrate, and that included me and my friends. One of them, Tyler, had access to his dad's boat, a massive, sleek thing docked behind their waterfront home in Edgewater, Florida. Tyler grew up with money. The rest of us, not so much. But we got to enjoy some of the perks just by hanging out with him. There was a big boat meetup planned out in the bay that weekend. Our tight crew, me, Ryan, and Chris, met up at Tyler's house to take the boat out and link up with the rest of the weekend crowd. Picture a shallow spot in the bay where dozens of boats were tied together, music thumping, people walking knee-deep in the water with drinks in hand, hopping from boat to boat like it was some kind of floating block party. We were all drinking, hard. Tyler included. At first, no one noticed how much he had. By the time we realized how hammered he was, it was already bad. I told him to sleep it off in the cabin below deck, and he stumbled down there to crash. As the sun dipped below the horizon, boats started peeling off one by one. Eventually, we were the only ones left. Just the four of us bobbing gently in the darkening water. I checked on Tyler, out cold. We waited, killing time until he woke up. When he finally did, he looked groggy but at least more aware. He climbed back up to the wheel and started steering us toward the canal that led to his house. That's when we noticed a set of lights behind us. Another boat. Seemed like it was following us. Tyler started panicking, whispering, "Is that the Marine Patrol?" He didn't want to do anything sketchy, no sudden turns, no speeding. Just steady, slow movement. We were all holding our breath. As we reached the canal, which is a strict no-wake zone, we had to slow even more. The other boat stayed right on our tail. We were getting nervous. Tyler started mumbling about getting slapped with a DUI, losing his license, and worse, having to explain everything to his dad. We pulled up to his private dock, and Tyler maneuvered the boat into place surprisingly well for someone who had been trashed just hours before. As we docked, the boat that had been following us drifted past, close enough to touch. It wasn't a patrol boat. It wasn't even someone Tyler recognized, and he knew every resident on that canal. "Who the hell are these guys?" he muttered. There were 3 men on board. All standing at the back, staring directly at us as they drifted by. Not waving. Not nodding. Just watching. Tyler called out, "Can I help you?" But they said nothing. Just kept staring as they slowly passed. It was unnerving. Sure, we were glad it wasn't law enforcement, but the vibes were off. I suggested maybe they were visiting someone nearby for the holiday. Tyler shrugged, still unsettled, and tied off the boat. We headed inside. His parents were out of town for the weekend, which meant we had the place to ourselves. Someone joked about throwing a late-night pool party, but it was already past 10, and none of us had the energy to rally a crowd. So we just grabbed some drinks and sat out by the pool, letting the night sink in. That same boat passed by again. This time slower. Again, the men were on board, again watching us. But now they looked more serious. More focused. No one said anything. Not even Tyler. After that, things turned into a blur. We kept drinking. The pool water rippled gently beside us. My memory starts to fade here, and I'm guessing I blacked out sometime after midnight. The next thing I remember is waking up with my mouth feeling like sandpaper. At first, I thought the thirst had startled me awake, but it wasn't that simple. I sat up and looked around. Ryan and Chris were both knocked out on the couch. I wandered into the kitchen, planning to chug some water straight from the tap. And that's when I saw him. A man in all black, ski mask, gloves, and holding a handgun. I froze. He pointed the weapon at me and spoke in a low voice, "Don't make a sound." Every nerve in my body screamed, but I didn't move. He asked quietly, Where's the owner of the house? I barely managed to whisper, I don't know. He tilted his head. Which room's his? I hesitated, but then pointed upstairs. He motioned for me to lead the way. As I walked slowly up the stairs, I realized there were footsteps behind me that didn't belong to just one person. A second man had joined us. Same outfit, black from head to toe. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought they could hear it. At the top of the stairs, I led them to Tyler's room. He was still asleep, totally unaware. They had me shake him awake quietly. Tyler sat up groggily, confused. He started to speak, but one of the men stepped forward and pressed the barrel of the gun close to his face. "Shut up," the man growled. "Where's the safe?" You could see the realization hit Tyler all at once. The fear. The understanding. He led them down the hall to his parents' master bedroom and into a walk-in closet. There, behind a row of coats, was a wall-mounted safe. They told him to call his dad. Tyler, voice trembling, explained that they were being held at gunpoint and needed the combination. His dad hesitated, then gave it. The intruders opened the safe and dumped everything into a duffel bag: cash, jewelry, bonds, documents. Then they were gone. No screeching tires. No slammed doors. No barking dogs. Just gone. We called the police. We posted on Ring. Tyler's family contacted the news. But nothing came of it. No IDs, no sightings. Like ghosts in the night. Looking back, we all know those guys had followed us from the bay. They saw the boat, figured it belonged to money, and tracked us home. That night left a scar. I've never felt so fragile, like one wrong move would have ended me. Like a switch could have flipped, and everything would have gone dark. Now, I don't go out to remote places anymore. Not on boats. Not on holidays. And I know my friends don't either. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I'd been hauling freight across the U.S. for about 15 years now. This happened back in 2017, during a night run through the dead stretch between Silver Ridge and Canyon Creek, somewhere deep in the Arizona desert. I was headed east, trying to make a delivery deadline. I think it was kitchen appliances, but honestly, I don't remember. What I do remember is the dark. Thick, absolute blackness in every direction. My rig's headlights had been getting dim, and I'd been lazy about fixing them. Dumb decision, looking back. Usually, I could deal with it, but that night there were no other cars, just a two-lane road carved through silence. I had to squint every few minutes just to stay on track. It felt like I was the last person left on Earth. I considered pulling over and waiting for sunrise. But I needed the money too badly. Bills were stacking up, and I couldn't afford to lose the bonus for an on-time drop. So I told myself it was just a straight road, I'd be fine. About an hour before dawn, something appeared in the distance. Fast. I slammed on the brakes, thinking maybe it was a deer or coyote. My tires screeched as the rig slowed, dust swirling in the headlights. But what I stopped for wasn't an animal. It was a car. Parked dead center on the yellow lines. Hazard lights blinking. What struck me as odd, besides it being in the middle of nowhere, was that the passenger door was hanging wide open. I brought the truck to a full stop, maybe a foot away from hitting it. My gut didn't scream danger at first. I've seen weirder things on the road. And I'm not exactly the panicky type. Years on the road, a few bar fights, nothing much rattles me. So, I figured someone might have broken down. I reversed a few feet and pulled over to the side. Thought about throwing out some flares, but I hadn't seen a single car in hours. I stepped out. It was oddly warm for desert night air, still, dry, and too quiet. No wind. No insects. Just the tick-tick-tick of those hazards. The car was a clean, newer-looking red Ford Fusion. Passenger doors still open like someone had jumped out mid-drive. I circled the vehicle slowly, half expecting someone to pop out asking for help. But there was nobody. I checked the front and back seats. Empty. No bags. No jackets. No phone charging. Just nothing. The whole car was spotless. And it gave me a chill I didn't expect. That's when my instincts started whispering something was off. I looked around out into the endless dark. Couldn't see beyond the reach of my truck's lights. Just sand, brush, and black sky. I kept spinning, checking behind me. I felt like someone or something was watching. Maybe from the roadside. Maybe closer. Still, I pushed forward. I peeked inside again. The keys were sitting in the ignition. The engine was off. Not even a low hum. Trying not to overthink it, I went around to the trunk. Gave it a pull. Nothing. I took the keys, unlocked it, and tried again. Still stuck. That's when I noticed something odd, the rope. I opened the rear passenger door and slid the seat down. From there, I could peek into the trunk. 3 large black trash bags. Tightly packed. A rope was tied from inside, keeping the latch shut. My pulse picked up. I leaned closer to get a better look, one hand reaching for the nearest bag. And that's when it happened. Bang! A gunshot cracked through the air, so loud and close I thought I'd been hit. I smacked my head against the roof in shock and nearly fell backwards. Didn't even have time to think. I tossed the keys onto the front seat and bolted out of the car. As I scrambled up into the cab of my truck, I heard a voice, raspy, panicked, shouting from the darkness. "Hey! Hey!" The voice was getting louder, closer. I jammed the keys in, tried to start the engine, stalled. "Come on, come on!" I cursed under my breath, slammed the gearshift, and finally got the rig moving. And that's when I saw him. Standing right at the rear of the Ford, lit up in my high beams. He wasn't what I expected. A short, stocky guy. Red hair. Wearing a pair of stained denim overalls and scuffed brown boots. In one hand, he held a small shovel. In the other? An old hunting rifle. We locked eyes as I crept forward. He didn't aim it. Didn't move. He didn't look crazed, just tired. Like a man who hadn't slept in days. His face was pale. His mouth slightly open. Then something strange happened. He dropped the shovel. Right there in the road. And he started waving both hands in the air. Not threatening. Not angry. More like desperate. Like he was begging me not to go. Let me tell you about one of the scariest nights of my life, something that still messes with my head, even now. It all started when I pulled off a quiet desert highway in Arizona. The guy behind me had just done something seriously shady. He'd been digging a hole by the road with a tiny shovel and acting strange. I yelled out to him, "Hey, wait!" A few times. But the second he looked up, I got this horrible gut feeling. There was no way I was sticking around to see what he was up to. I jumped in my truck and hit the gas. I could see him in the rearview mirror, running after me at first, then turning around and sprinting back to his car. The dude clearly didn't want me to leave, but I wasn't taking any chances. I pushed my Freightliner harder than I should have, speeding down the 2-lane road, hoping to put miles between us. After about 5 minutes, I started to relax. Thought maybe I'd overreacted. But then headlights appeared behind me, and they were gaining fast. I've never felt that kind of fear before. A tight, icy grip in my chest. I grabbed my phone and called 911, giving them the best explanation I could. While I was talking, the car came up right behind me and started blaring its horn like crazy. I had no idea what he was planning, if he was armed or if he'd try to ram me. So I just kept driving. My hands were shaking. I prayed under my breath, just hoping I could outrun whatever this was. About 15 minutes into this chase, he suddenly swerved in front of me and slammed his brakes. I barely managed to avoid plowing into him. I was just bracing for impact when, out of nowhere, blue and red lights lit up the horizon. A patrol cruiser came rolling up. The other car took off immediately, veering into the desert and vanishing into the darkness like a ghost. I pulled over, heart pounding, and waited for the officer. When he showed up, I poured out the whole story, probably talking a mile a minute. But instead of chasing the guy, the cop just pulled out a notepad and asked me to file a report. No urgency. No backup rushing to catch the guy. Nothing. I told him twice that if he left right then, he might actually catch the guy. He shrugged it off, said they'd search once more units arrived, and sent me on my way. They never called back. Never followed up. I've told this story more times than I can count, and my buddies always say the same thing, that guy was definitely burying bodies. And maybe he was. But the shovel he had was small. So were the bags in his trunk. Some of my friends think he was dismembering whatever or whoever he was burying. For my own sanity, I try to tell myself it was something else. Maybe a sick dog. Or some kind of dangerous animal. Maybe he was just trying to put it down and spare it from more pain. I don't really know. All I know is, ever since that night, I haven't felt comfortable driving through the desert after dark. Even with the windows up and the doors locked, there's always this lingering dread, like something's waiting just outside the edge of the headlights. If you've ever watched those trucker videos on TikTok or YouTube Shorts where drivers share routines, tips, and creepy encounters, you probably know what I'm talking about. Or maybe you don't. I'm on the younger side of this industry, and yeah, I could have taken a different path. I had a scholarship to a great college. Dropped out for personal reasons I don't usually talk about. People say I could have done something bigger than trucking. But honestly, it's not a bad life. I've been at it for over 2 years now. The only real challenge is the solitude. You don't know what being alone does to your head until you've been behind the wheel for 10, 12 hours straight, nothing but static and darkness for company. That kind of isolation brings out thoughts you didn't even know were buried inside you. Trust me, if you've got demons, they'll find you out here. That's what happened to me. This whole story took place just 3 months after I got hired at my first job. I was still green. Still learning the ropes. That night, I was hauling a load from southern New Jersey to Lafayette, Indiana. A 12-hour drive. Not terrible on paper, but it was right after finishing another 8-hour haul. I didn't want to waste time sleeping in some truck stop, so I decided to power through and drive overnight. If all went well, I'd roll into Lafayette around 3 a.m. The first few hours were smooth. Hardly any cars on the road. I was cruising. But around the halfway mark, I reached for a Red Bull in my center console and realized I'd forgotten to restock. Total rookie move. I slapped the dashboard in frustration. I hate making stops when I'm in the zone, it throws off my rhythm and somehow makes me even more tired. Still, I was on the edge of nodding off. I had 2 choices, fall asleep at the wheel, or pull over and find caffeine. The navigation said there was a service stop nearby. I pulled off the highway and rolled into a dark stretch of road somewhere in rural Ohio. Except, this wasn't a service stop. It looked like an old, shut-down gas station with a weird little convenience store next to it. Maybe someone had tried to reopen it as a private shop or something. The windows were dark. The place looked abandoned. But there was a second building just a little further up, so I figured I'd check that out if this one was a bust. I parked my semi out front and walked toward the door. I figured it would either be locked or open. I wasn't expecting what actually happened. The door creaked open on its own. Pitch black inside. No lights. No sounds. Nothing. I froze for a second. Something about the air felt wrong. Still, I stepped inside, hoping maybe, just maybe, there was an old cooler still running. Maybe a soda left behind. Maybe a snack or two that hadn't gone stale. What I didn't expect was the smell. Musty. Like mold and something else, something sweet and rotten. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight. That's when I saw the shelves, mostly bare, except for a few odd items that didn't seem to belong there. A rusted toolbox. A stuffed animal with one eye missing. A stack of VHS tapes. It was like walking into a forgotten memory that didn't belong to me. I should have left right then. But I didn't. Just before I turned around, my eyes began adjusting to the dim light, and I spotted a faint glow coming from the far corner of the building. It wasn't much, just a soft pulse of light leaking through the cracked door of what looked like a back storage room. Curiosity nudged me forward. I opened the door slowly, careful not to let the old hinges squeal. To my surprise, the glow was coming from a plugged-in refrigerator pressed against the far wall. It hummed softly, which struck me as strange. This whole gas station had looked dead for years. I pulled the door open. Empty. No drinks. No snacks. Nothing. Not even shelves. Just a hollow, gutted shell like someone had ripped out its insides. Right as I was about to close it, I swear I heard a soft clatter behind me, like something fell in the main room. I froze. Not breathing. Just listening. 10 seconds passed. Maybe more. Nothing. I crept back into the main room, glancing around. Nothing on the floor. No broken glass. No one waiting in the shadows. It was silent again, like the building had swallowed the noise hole. Part of me wanted to dig deeper. But I didn't have time for a mystery. I walked out the front door and half-jogged across the lot to the next gas station. It was open. Thank God. I paid for a soda, keeping my eyes on the flickering lights inside the abandoned building behind me. I got back to my rig and sat there for a second, engine off, heart still thumping. Something felt off. I started the truck and took one last glance at the station. The front door was wide open. I was sure I had closed it. Pulled it shut. Even heard the latch. But it was swinging now in the breeze. It wasn't my business. Not really. I shifted into gear and rolled back onto the highway, trying to shake it from my mind. The cold soda helped wake me up. The caffeine snapped me out of that sleepy haze, and my thoughts drifted back to what had just happened. I told myself it wasn't that weird. Just some forgotten pit stop with a weird fridge and a creaky floor. Maybe someone had stripped it for copper. Maybe squatters had taken over. But that fridge... I couldn't explain that. Who keeps a fridge plugged in when everything else is dead? I tried to let it go. A few miles later, something tugged at the edge of my focus. I glanced at the curtain behind me, the one separating the cab from the sleeper area. It was moving. Not just shifting from the wind. Billowing. But I hadn't turned on the air. A drop of sweat slid down my temple. I stared at the curtain through the rearview mirror. It puffed again, like someone behind it had exhaled. My throat tightened. Someone was in my truck. I didn't have a weapon. No bat. Not even a tire iron within reach. I kept calm and slowly pulled out my phone. I punched in directions to the nearest police station and prayed it wasn't far. Each second felt longer than the last. The drive took 20 minutes. Longest drive of my life. I kept glancing at the mirror, expecting fingers to part the curtain. A face. A knife. Anything. But it never happened. When I finally saw the flashing blue lights of the sheriff's station, I swerved into the lot and stopped the truck as close as I could. I ran to the front door, breathless, stammering to the officer inside. Within seconds, they surrounded my rig. I stood back, hands shaking, as they opened the rear sleeper. What they found inside still gives me nightmares. 3 people. 2 men. 1 woman. All wrapped in filthy blankets. They looked like they hadn't seen daylight in weeks. The cops pulled them out one by one. One guy had 2 switchblades tucked into his waistband. None of them spoke. They just stared at me like they knew me. Like I had taken something from them. They were cuffed and taken inside. No answers. No explanation. Just silence. My name's Kevin. I've been a trucker for 15 years, working for different companies across the country. Most of the time it's just routine: load, verify, deliver. We're not paid by the hour, so the faster we move, the better we do. I've been doing this long enough to think I've seen it all. Young drivers come and go, but guys like me, we learn how to stretch our limits. How to work through exhaustion. It's not always smart. But it's the job. A few years back, I was hauling shipments out of a warehouse in rural Montana. That time of year, early May, the night still felt like winter. Crisp and quiet. I had a full route lined up. If I timed everything right, I wouldn't even have to stop for the night. No sleep, just a hard push. I left just after lunch and aimed across the state line before dawn. By midnight, I was fighting off sleep. My eyes were dry, lids heavy. I rubbed them hard and focused on the road. That's when I reached for the smelling salts. A buddy of mine, Tristan, got me into them when I started out. If you've never tried them, they're like a kick in the chest. One deep inhale and your brain lights up like Christmas. They burn, yeah. But they work. I cracked open the little tube and took a whiff. Instantly, my head shot back. My eyes snapped wide. Adrenaline. Pure and fast. It got me going again, but only for a while. 30 minutes later, I was losing the battle again. My eyelids drooped, just for a second, but that's all it took. The rumble strips on the shoulder screamed beneath my tires. The jolt sent my heart into my throat. I straightened out and gripped the wheel, forcing myself to stay alert. And that's when I saw something up ahead. Something that shouldn't have been on that road. I knew I had to stop. This was getting dangerous. My eyes were heavy, and the road was starting to blur. But I was alone on the stretch of Route 73 outside of Silver Creek, and there wasn't a turnout in sight. Just endless pine trees flanking both sides of the road. I eased off the gas, scanning for any kind of shoulder. The highway felt endless, and at this slow crawl, my headlights pushed deeper into the night than before. That's when I saw something that made no sense. A purple dress was lying right in the center of the road. I blinked a few times, rubbed my eyes, leaned forward. Still there. I slowed the truck to a near stop and rolled past it, staring. It didn't look old or torn. Just out of place. In hindsight, I should have taken it as a serious red flag. But I was too sleep-deprived to think straight. I kept moving. About 200 yards down, I passed a pair of small white sneakers. My stomach turned. What the hell was going on? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, glancing at the trees for any sign of life. I said a quick prayer and reached for the small wooden cross that had hung from my rearview since my dad passed. He was the religious one, not me, but tonight I needed something, anything, to hold on to. Another quarter-mile in, more clothes appeared scattered across the road. Smaller items. Children's clothes. That's when I stopped the truck. Every nerve in my body screamed that something wasn't right. I sat still for a moment, hands frozen on the wheel, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. Just the ticking of the engine and the soft hum of the heater. Against my better judgment, I stepped out. The cold air slapped me awake. It was that damp kind of cold, the kind that crept into your bones and didn't let go. I left the door open and walked toward the pile. My boots crunched on the gravel shoulder. They were kids' clothes, all right. A pink hoodie. A little flannel shirt. Even a stuffed animal with one ear half torn. I turned toward the woods, squinting into the darkness. I couldn't see anything past the first few trees. The forest looked like it swallowed the light whole. My heart was pounding. Was this a trap? I scanned around, stepping slowly backward toward the truck. That's when I heard it. A crunch. From the left side of the road. I spun around, trying to locate the sound. Dead silence. My breath clouded in the air. Then another crunch. This time from the right. Something deep in me snapped. I turned and sprinted for the truck, slammed the door, and locked it. Just as I grabbed the wheel, I heard it. A scream. A child's scream. High-pitched. Frantic. Coming from the woods. I froze. My dad's cross swung from the mirror, tapping softly against the glass. Another scream almost identical to the first ripped through the night. I didn't have time to think. I turned on the truck, threw it into drive, and pointed the headlights straight into the trees where the sound had come from. That's when I saw them. Maybe 3, maybe 4 people. Standing just inside the woods. One of them was holding a big black speaker. They ducked behind trees as soon as the lights hit them, but for a brief second, I saw exactly what they were doing. They were using the speaker. Playing fake child screams. Trying to lure someone into the woods. Me. I stared at the spot where they vanished. I couldn't move. My hands were shaking. I fumbled for my phone to call the police, but before I could finish dialing, something hit the side of the truck with a loud thud. I jumped. Someone had thrown something from the opposite side of the road. That was it for me. I slammed the truck into gear and floored it. As I peeled away, I caught a glimpse of someone on the shoulder, tall, hooded, screaming something I couldn't make out. A second later, something hit the passenger side window with a loud crack. The glass held, but a spiderweb of cracks spread instantly. I didn't stop. Not once. I drove the final hour to my drop-off in total silence. The heater buzzed, the radio was off, and my thoughts were racing. I didn't dare pull over. Not out there. After the delivery, I parked in a well-lit truck stop lot and passed out in the cab. I think I slept for 10 hours straight. When I woke up, I called the sheriff's department in Silver Creek and told them everything. They said they'd send someone out to check the area. I never heard back. I think about that night a lot. How stupid it was to get out of the truck. How easily it could have gone wrong. But when you think there might be kids in danger, it's hard to just drive away. Even now, I don't know what their plan was. Why they didn't come after me when they had the chance. Or what would have happened if I'd followed those screams into the trees. But I do know one thing. In all my years of driving, through storms and empty highways and sketchy rest stops, nothing has ever chilled me like that night outside of Silver Creek. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. It was a rainy Friday night in late October, and I was driving home after my late shift at Benny's Diner off Route 9. The place was quiet that night, only a couple of regulars and some kids passing through on a road trip. For some reason, I still had way too much energy, that kind of jittery restlessness you get after a long day on your feet. I already knew I'd need to take a melatonin when I got home just to wind down. I took my usual route, a back road through the outskirts of Pine Hollow, a sleepy town nestled between foggy woods and winding roads. During the day, it's charming. But at night? It's pitch black in places. Not many streetlights. Just stretches of thick trees, rain-slick asphalt, and the occasional roadside business with one flickering sign. As I passed the Pine Hollow Deli, an old family-run place that's been there forever, I noticed someone standing alone under the single light post in the parking lot. It was a woman, arm out, trying to flag me down. She looked out of place immediately, soaked to the bone and oddly still. I slowed down instinctively. She looked to be in her mid-50s, tall, maybe 6 feet, and painfully thin. Something about her posture seemed off. But I rolled down my window just enough and called out, "You okay? Need a ride?" She came straight to the door without hesitation and pulled it open. "You're a lifesaver, sweetheart," she said, her voice oddly cheerful considering the circumstances. I asked where she was headed. She pointed vaguely up the road. "Just into town," she said. Her clothes were drenched, water dripping onto my floor mats. Still, I didn't have the heart to leave a woman out in that weather. I told myself if it had been a man, I probably wouldn't have stopped. She sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, still smiling. But as the dome light flickered above us, I caught a better look at her. Her front teeth were missing. Not just one or two, several. It startled me. There was something unsettling about the grin she held, like it was too fixed, too wide. I wondered if she might have been homeless, but she didn't smell like it. Her coat, though soaked, looked clean. Her hair hung in wet strands down her face, maybe it was usually frizzy or messy, but the rain weighted down, made it seem neater than it was. We drove in silence for a few minutes until we came to the gas station near Maple Avenue. I pulled in under the canopy to fill up and asked if she wanted anything from inside. She shook her head, said, "No, thank you, honey." So I went in. Paid for gas and grabbed a pack of spiked seltzers, my little reward for making it through the week. When I got back to the car, she was gone. I looked around the lot, even walked toward the side of the building. Nothing. It was like she'd just vanished into the storm. I felt uneasy, but part of me was relieved too. I got in, filled the tank, and drove home. My place is a ground-floor apartment in a duplex just a few blocks from the center of town. The upstairs tenant travels a lot, so it usually feels like I've got the whole place to myself. The front door into the shared entryway is usually left unlocked, but each apartment has its own deadbolt. I stepped in from the cold and set the seltzers down on the kitchen counter. I kicked off my shoes, took a melatonin, and tried to calm my brain. But even after laying down, sleep wouldn't come. My thoughts kept looping back to that woman. Where did she go? Why was she out there? I heard soft creaks and shifts from the ceiling above, probably the old pipes or the wind outside, or so I told myself. I wasn't scared, just unsettled. Sometime later, I drifted off. But then I woke up abruptly. The room was dark. I'd left a nightlight on in the hallway, but it wasn't casting the usual glow. I sat up, throat dry and eyes still adjusting. I reached for the water bottle on my nightstand when something moved. Across the room. In the far corner, partly hidden behind my dresser, was a crouched figure. Legs folded. Not moving. I blinked hard. No. No way. I rubbed my eyes, shook my head, even slapped myself lightly on the cheek. The figure stood up. It didn't say a word. Just walked slowly out of the room. I sat frozen. Too shocked to scream. Too confused to act. There were no footsteps. No doors opening or closing. No floor creaks. Just silence. I grabbed my phone and called my dad. It was past 3 a.m., but he picked up groggily. I told him everything. His first thought? Night terror. Trish, he said gently, you probably dreamed it. Melatonin can do that. I stayed on the line with him as I got up and turned on the living room light. Everything looked normal. Front door locked. Windows closed. No signs of anyone. I started to believe maybe I had imagined it. Maybe. Still, I locked my bedroom door and left the light on when I finally went back to sleep. Next morning, I got ready for the gym. Threw on my hoodie, poured some coffee, and went to the front door. It was unlocked. I know I locked it. I remember the click. My stomach dropped. I searched the apartment again, every closet, every cabinet. Nothing. But something still felt wrong. When I stepped outside, the air was sharp and wet. I walked to my SUV, opened the back door to toss in my gym bag, and that's when I saw it. Damp, yellowish stains all over the back floor mat. And the fleece blanket I always kept in the back? Gone. I froze. She had climbed back into the car when I went into the gas station. She rode with me all the way home. She must have slipped out without a sound. Maybe when I was showering. Maybe while I was on the phone. Maybe even while I was sleeping. I called my dad again, panic rising in my throat. Dad, I said, voice shaking, she was in the house. After I told my brother about what happened, he said to check if anything was missing, and if not, then maybe there was no point in calling the police. I checked every room in the apartment, nothing seemed out of place. Just the blanket from the back seat of my car was gone. I didn't go to the gym that day. Honestly, I didn't go anywhere for a while. I stayed holed up in my small Denver apartment. That whole experience had left me shaken. Something about it just didn't sit right. I knew deep down I didn't want to live there much longer. So by the end of the month, I packed up and moved across town to a new place, hoping to reset. A few months passed. One night, Michael, an old friend from my first year of high school, invited me to a party on the edge of town, in a suburb called Hollow Creek. I don't even remember why I said yes. I wasn't technically invited, but Michael convinced the host to let me come. I figured I'd tag along since I wasn't driving anyway. We pulled up around midnight. The house was tucked away behind tall hedges, barely lit except for the orange glow of backyard string lights. Just before getting out, Michael told me to leave my phone in his glove box. He said it might get lost, or worse, someone might snatch it while I wasn't looking. I gave him a confused look but didn't argue. I slipped it into the compartment and followed him into the backyard where the party was already going strong. Loud music, the smell of beer, and a mix of smoke and cold autumn air filled the space. Kids clustered in corners, laughing too hard, whispering too low, passing around things I didn't want to identify. Michael nudged me to go talk to people. I tried. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of how many drinks I'd had. My head started spinning, and the yard looked like it was moving in waves. I stumbled toward the house and leaned against the wall, just trying to stay upright. I checked my watch. 12:47 a.m. Maybe later. I couldn't tell anymore. But I knew it was time to leave. I scanned the crowd for Michael, but he was nowhere. I asked a few people if they'd seen him, but they just shrugged. I reached into my pocket for my phone, then groaned. It was still in Michael's car. I felt a wave of panic. I didn't know anyone else here, and the house felt like it was tilting under my feet. My apartment was only a 30-minute walk away. I figured walking was better than waiting around. The air had turned colder, biting against my thin hoodie as I stumbled toward the road. The quiet of the night hit me hard after all the noise. I walked along the side of the road, arms crossed tightly, the yellow streetlights flickering every few blocks. My head ached, and every few steps I cursed Michael, cursed myself, cursed everything. Why had I trusted him? Why had I gotten so drunk? Why had I agreed to come in the first place? Eventually, I stopped walking and just stood there, shivering. Then I remembered something people used to do in old movies. Hitchhiking. I figured maybe, just maybe, someone decent would stop. I stuck out my thumb and waited. A few cars passed without even slowing down. Some didn't even look in my direction. Minutes dragged by. I was about to start walking again when I saw headlights approaching. A gray pickup slowed down and pulled to the side of the road. The driver rolled down the window. He was a middle-aged guy with a bushy beard and tired eyes. "Need a ride?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. I live off Sycamore Drive." He waved me in. "Hop in. I'll take you." The warmth inside the truck was immediate, and I sighed with relief as I buckled the seatbelt. The man tried to strike up conversation, asking what happened, why I was out so late. But I could barely string words together. I muttered something about a party and losing track of time. As we drove, something felt off. He kept glancing at me a little too long, smiling a little too wide. When we turned onto my street, I relaxed until we passed my house. "Hey, you just missed it," I said, trying to sound alert. He didn't answer right away. I looked at him. His face had shifted. That tired, friendly look was gone. He smirked, but there was nothing kind in it. "You really shouldn't drink that much when you're alone," he said quietly, eyes locked on the road. "You make an easy target." Then, with no warning, he reached over and placed his hand on my leg. I froze. My body screamed at me to move, but I was too foggy, too slow. I opened my mouth to yell, but before I could, flashing lights lit up the inside of the truck. Red and blue filled the windshield. A siren wailed. The man cursed under his breath and slammed on the brakes. The moment the locks clicked, I yanked the handle and threw myself out of the car into the cold night. I don't remember what happened next, just the sudden freedom of fresh air, the relief that someone had seen me, and the overwhelming desire to never, ever trust a stranger again. I ran as fast as I could, and luckily, a sheriff's deputy happened to be driving down the road. He pulled over immediately. I told him everything, how I'd ended up alone on the roadside after that party. Unfortunately, since I hadn't technically been harmed or robbed, there wasn't much he could do legally at that point. He told me he was already in the area looking for someone driving a gray pickup that had reportedly stolen merchandise from a nearby gas station. I don't know if it was the same guy who picked me up, or just a coincidence, but I was relieved he stopped the car when he did. The officer offered to drive me home. On the ride back, I silently made a promise to myself: never again would I get so wasted that I couldn't make smart decisions. That night taught me to never let my guard down, especially while out having fun. At the time, I was a junior at a state college in the Pacific Northwest, about 2 hours from Seattle. It was one of those laid-back college towns surrounded by pine trees and fog-covered roads. Not Ivy League or anything, but definitely known for its wild party scene. I wasn't part of Greek life, but that didn't stop me from going to the parties. My friends Deanna and Kayla were my ride-or-die weekend crew. Back then, I was drinking way more than I should have. That phase of my life was messy, but maybe necessary. I had to burn out before I wised up. Anyway, that weekend, the three of us were headed to a big party at the Sigma Delta Chi House. I think it was their spring kickoff or something. I never kept track of those frat themes, just that there'd be music, cheap beer, and chaos. We lived in a rental house off campus, just 4 of us girls trying to survive the semester. It wasn't a sorority house, just one of those classic offbeat college rentals with squeaky floors, mismatched furniture, and a fridge that always reeked of old pizza. The frat house was about a 20-minute drive from where we lived. We started pre-gaming at home, like we always did, at shots of vodka, bad playlists, too much eyeliner. Then we called an Uber, and of course, we brought drinks for the ride. Stupid, I know. But at the time, it felt like the most normal thing in the world. By the time we arrived, I was already teetering on the edge of blacking out. I only have flashes of memory from that night. I vaguely remember the house. It was huge, with Greek letters carved into the front porch. There were guys standing around out front, laughing way too loud. Inside, I remember a DJ set up in the living room and beer pong tables taking over the kitchen. Someone told me later that I'd played a couple of games with some random frat guy and ended up talking to him in a dark corner for a while. After that, no one really knew where I went. The next thing I remember clearly, I was lying in the grass near the edge of a quiet road, surrounded by thick trees. My head was pounding. I must have still been drunk because everything felt off, like I was dreaming. The sky was pitch black. I was next to a wooded area, no buildings in sight. That's pretty typical for that part of town. Once you leave campus, you're surrounded by forest and fog until the next sleepy gas station. There were a few streetlights flickering in the distance, casting these long shadows across the pavement. I patted down my jacket pockets. Empty. My phone was gone. So was my little crossbody purse. No ID. No cash. No clue where I even was. Panic started creeping in. I was stranded with nothing, no way to call for help or even figure out the time. I stood up and looked around the shoulder of the road. My white top was streaked with dirt and grass stains, and my hands were freezing. I decided to start walking. I headed toward the lights in the distance, hoping they'd lead somewhere safe. But the further I walked, the more I realized I was totally alone. No houses. No signs. Just endless road and fog. Eventually, I made it to one of the lampposts and leaned against it, trying to calm down. I figured my best bet was to wait for a car to pass. Hopefully someone kind, or at least not dangerous. It took over 15 minutes before I saw headlights approaching. I jumped into the road, waving both arms like crazy. The car slowed down and pulled over. The driver rolled down the window. He looked concerned. Asked if I was okay. I told him I didn't have my phone and had no way to get home. He said, "Hop in," and I did. I thanked him, maybe too eagerly. He asked what happened, and I told him the short version, that I went to a party and somehow ended up alone, out here. Looking back, I wish I hadn't said that much. I should have played it cool, said I was just walking home. But I was tired and scared and not thinking straight. He asked why I didn't call anyone, and I said my phone was missing too. He gave me a weird look, like a mix between amusement and judgment. It was the first time I really paid attention to him. He looked about mid-30s, thinning hair, a patchy goatee, and a long nose. Not ugly, just off. He had the kind of face you'd forget 5 minutes later but feel uneasy around. I gave him my address, and he typed it into his GPS. As he started driving, I heard him mutter, "All right, here we go." I asked how far it was. He said 20 minutes. That sounded about right, distance-wise. The frat house was that far from our place. I figured I'd get home, walk in the door, and see Deanna and Kayla passed out on the couch. I'd find my stuff and laugh it all off in the morning. But of course, things never go that smoothly. The man kept his voice soft the entire drive. Too soft. He asked simple questions, where I went to school, if I lived with roommates, if I had a boyfriend. Basic stuff. But something about the way he spoke made me feel weird. Like I was being gently interrogated. Let me tell you about a night that still makes my skin crawl. It started after a Halloween party in the quiet town of Maple Hollow, Pennsylvania. I'd had a few drinks, too many, really, and lost track of my friends. My phone was dead, and when I stepped outside, my ride was nowhere to be seen. So, I made a decision I regret to this day. I accepted a ride from a guy who offered. He was driving a silver sedan and looked normal enough, mid-30s, short brown hair, wearing a zip-up hoodie. I didn't catch his name. Maybe I didn't want to. As soon as I got in, I noticed something off. He was speaking in this almost whisper, like he didn't want to wake someone up, even though it was just the two of us in the car. We drove for what felt like 20 minutes along the same narrow back road, trees lining both sides like walls. No streetlights. No houses. Just darkness and forest. I asked how much farther we had to go. At first, he didn't answer. So I repeated myself, gently. "Sir?" He snapped out of it. "Whom?" I asked again. He replied softly, "Not far." That didn't sit right. My friends lived in town. We should have hit some neighborhoods by now. Not endless trees. Then I noticed him glancing at me, no, turning his head to look at me every few minutes. Not subtly. Full-on staring, then shifting back to the road. My stomach turned. I asked, "Did you put in the right address?" He nodded. "Yeah." Then came something I'll never forget. He looked over and said, "What color underwear are you wearing?" Before I could react, he reached over and placed his hand on my knee. I pulled away, voice trembling. "Please don't hurt me. I just want to go home." He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just calmly said, "Why would I hurt you?" Then he pulled over onto the grass, parked, and leaned toward me like he was about to touch me again. I didn't wait. I threw open the door and bolted into the woods. My sneakers, thank God for my beat-up Nikes, dug into the soil as I ran, branches slapping my arms. I only stopped once the car's headlights disappeared behind the trees. That's when I heard it. His voice, no longer soft, shouting into the darkness. "Where you at?" "I just want to talk. I want to lick you." I pressed my hands over my mouth to silence my breathing. Every part of me shook. Then came the sound of the car door slamming shut, followed by tires peeling away. I waited. Minutes passed. Finally, I crept out of the woods, heart pounding, and scanned the road. He was gone. But I was stranded. Alone. No phone. No light. Just cold air and fear clinging to me like sweat. I stood near the trees, hoping, praying, for someone safe to drive by. Eventually, headlights approached. A truck. I waited, heart in my throat, until I saw an older man behind the wheel. I ran out, waving my arms. He stopped. I got in the back seat. Could barely talk. Just nodded as he asked if I was okay, if I needed help. He drove me to my friend's place. It was close to 4 a.m. They were still awake, panicked. They had my bag and phone. They told me they were about to call the police. No one knew who I'd left with. No one even remembered seeing me leave. The guy I had been talking to earlier claimed it wasn't him. And the strange thing is, there's no proof I left with anyone. But how else would I have ended up on the side of a road miles out of town? I stopped drinking like that after that night. I never want to be in a position again where I need to rely on a stranger. But that wasn't the only time something unsettling happened. Months later, I found myself hitchhiking again, something I swore I'd never do. This time it was out west, somewhere along Route 12 in Oregon. I was trying to get to Portland to pick up some artwork from a gallery. It was early October, one of those crisp, sunny fall days. I was 29. The man who stopped to offer a ride looked about the same age. His car was a weathered old hatchback, covered in dust. He was unshaven, a little wiry, with a quiet, twitchy energy. He didn't say much at first. Just nodded when I asked for a ride west. We drove for a bit along the main highway. I tried to make small talk, but he didn't seem too interested. Then, out of nowhere, he leaned over and opened the glove compartment. 4 passports spilled out. He handed them to me one by one. "This girl," he said, pointing to the first photo, "she was my fiancée. Fell off my bike. The second, he said, died in a car crash. The third, brain tumor. The fourth, horse accident. I'm an unlucky guy, he said with a sad smile. I just nodded. I didn't know what else to say. That creeping feeling returned. Like the kind you get before a thunderstorm hits. He was carrying 4 passports of young women, all dead? Then he said, let's take a shortcut to Portland. It wasn't a suggestion. I forced a smile. Sure. I expected winding roads, maybe quiet neighborhoods or sleepy farms. But no. He turned off the highway onto a dirt road that barely looked like a road at all. We bounced over rocks and weeds, the trees growing denser on either side. The sky darkened behind the branches. And still, I stayed quiet. Why do we do that? Why don't we scream or demand to get out? Maybe because politeness runs deeper than fear. Maybe because we hope we're just being paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The forest swallowed the sun. The dirt road narrowed, curving into the woods, and I realized I might not make it out of this one. It got darker the second we turned onto the forest road. The sun dipped behind the tree line, and the world felt like it closed in. Pines on either side leaned over the narrow road like they were hiding something. There was something eerie about it all, and yet, strangely beautiful. A haunting kind of beauty. That's when my driver, an older man named Alan, who'd picked me up just outside of Flagstaff, muttered in broken English, "No more English now." It didn't sound like a request. Just a rule. Then came silence. Uncomfortable, pressing silence. Something in my chest tightened. That creeping rush of adrenaline started up, fight or flight waking from its slumber. There would be no more questions. No more conversation. And the deeper we drove into the woods, the more I realized how much I wanted to ask him. But I didn't. It was just before 5 p.m., and the light was fading fast. The trees swallowed the sun. Shadows turned heavy. Alan's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. His lips moved just slightly, as if he were whispering something to himself. It was a slow, snake-like motion. Mechanical. Rehearsed. My hand moved instinctively to the door handle, my body reacting before my brain could even think. He must have noticed. The car started to slow, and he said nothing. Was this it? Was this how it ended? Did he have a gun tucked under the seat? A knife hidden nearby? I turned slightly, trying not to make it obvious. But my mind was racing. Everything felt wrong. I wasn't supposed to be here. Maybe something inside me sent out a signal. A warning. Something primal. I've had anger problems before, and I wasn't about to go down without a fight. Not for this guy. Not today. I wasn't going to beg. Not to him. I had my own darkness. I was bigger back then, lean from travel, sunburned, hardened by miles of road and little sleep. I gave him a stare. Cold. Empty. The kind that said, "You don't want to find out what I'm capable of." And for a moment, just a second, something passed between us. Some kind of silent, animal understanding. Like we were both weighing it all, strength, intent, pain tolerance, how fast one could bleed out. I think when a predator picks someone weak, it's about domination. Panic. Surrender. But when two people aren't sure who would win, that's different. That's risk. At 5:12 p.m., the car crawled along at a crawl. A near stop. Something in me shifted. I found a strange new part of myself. A quiet, dark place. I could kill him. If I had to. Maybe he saw that in me. Maybe my hand on the door, or the way I held my breath, told him. Maybe it was the tension in the air. Then, without warning, we sped up. Fast. Out of the woods. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. The trees gave way to amber sky. The road widened. I could see the highway now, glowing like salvation. Houses dotted the far side. I had no idea where we were. Alan turned and asked if I wanted to spend the night at his place. Said he'd cook dinner. In that instant, I saw it, his basement. Cold tile floors. A rusted chain on a wall. The kind of place no one walks out of. I said no. Calmly. My first word since he'd told me not to speak. And I honestly believe, if I had talked in the forest, just nervously chattered, things might have ended differently. It was the silence that saved me. Sometimes you have to be quiet. Sometimes silence is all you've got to hold on to. Maybe someone else, one of the faces in those passports, had cried. Had begged. Had fed whatever lived inside him. I got out on the side of the highway. The sun was almost gone. I stood there, shaking, watching him drive off into the night. I never went to the police. I didn't speak much French. And part of me thought, maybe I imagined it. Maybe my mind had run wild. But then I yelled. Just screamed into the empty night air. A release. Confusion. Rage. When I couldn't walk anymore, I curled up and slept right there on the shoulder of the road. The next morning, I woke up. Alive. I looked at my hands like they didn't belong to me. 20 years later, I was teaching English to a German student in a little cafe in downtown Asheville, North Carolina. We started talking about hitchhiking. I told him my story. He pulled out his phone and typed something in. Then he turned the screen toward me. A photo. A name. I froze. It was him. A serial killer named Marcus LeClaire. Caught years ago. The man in the photo looked just like the driver, older now, but still the same deep-set eyes. Back in 1990, they say he left bodies scattered across Arizona highways. Mostly women. Sometimes young men. He had a whole system. A hobby. I remembered my girlfriend at the time had warned me to stop hitchhiking. And I've often wondered how many of them ended up in those woods. Buried under pine needles and forgotten leaves? I wish I'd gone to the police sooner. I've tried since. He's behind bars now, and no one seems to care. They told me it's too late. But something's been heavy on my soul ever since. Like a shadow burned into my chest. I sometimes think, maybe the souls of those girls rode with me out of those woods. Maybe they followed me, desperate to escape. Maybe that's why I lived. Closing line, do you believe in second chances? Because I think something out there gave me one. And I've never stopped wondering why. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. My name is Jake. I live alone in a small town called Maple Grove. It's quiet here. Trees line every street. Neighbors wave from their porches. People leave their doors unlocked. I moved back after my mom passed away last fall. The house felt cold without her. She used to light candles at night. Now, it just smelled like old wood and dust. I work as a part-time security guard at the high school. It's not a hard job. Just long hours. I like the silence sometimes. It helps me think. One night, about a week before Halloween, something strange started happening. It was around 2 a.m. The wind outside was loud. Leaves hit the windows. I was lying on the couch, scrolling my phone with the lights off. That's when I saw it. A light. In the backyard. It was small. Like someone holding a candle or maybe a phone flashlight. but no one should have been back there. I sat up and stared through the window. It flickered once. Then again. I grabbed a flashlight and walked to the back door. When I opened it, cold air rushed in. I stepped onto the porch. The light was gone. Just fog now. And the sound of the wind through the trees. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe a neighbor's light shining through. But still, it fell off. The next night, it happened again. This time, I was ready. I didn't go outside. I just stood at the window and watched. The light came back. Same place. Right in the middle of my yard. It flickered slowly. Like it wanted me to come closer. Then I saw something else. A shape. A person. Just standing there. I blinked, and it was gone. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the backyard. No footprints. No sign anyone had been there. But I felt something strange in the air. Like it was heavier than usual. That night, I called my friend Chris. He works at the sheriff's office. I told him what I saw. He laughed at first, said maybe I was dreaming. But then he paused. "You sure you didn't leave your motion light on?" he asked. "I don't have one," I told him. That got him quiet. The third night, I sat by the window again. The light came back. This time, I noticed something weird. My phone started glitching. The screen flickered. It showed static. Then went black. Right after that, my old radio in the kitchen turned on by itself. A woman's voice came through. But it wasn't a song. She whispered, "Don't come outside." My chest felt tight. I turned off the radio. I turned on every light in the house. I didn't go near the backyard. The next morning, I found the back door wide open. I swear I locked it. I told Chris again. He said he'd swing by that night. When he showed up, the sky was dark and cloudy. Cold rain started to fall. We sat in the living room. He had a cup of coffee. I kept looking at the window. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. Then 2. Nothing. Chris said maybe it was just stress. Grief. Isolation. He offered to stay the night, but I said I'd be okay. He left around 2:30. At 2:45, the light came back. This time, it was closer. Right under my window. The shape stood there again. Only this time, I could see her face. It looked like my mother. But, not really. Her mouth was open. Her eyes were dark. Her head tilted slowly, like it was too heavy for her neck. I stepped back from the window. My hands were shaking. Then I heard tapping. From the back door. Soft. Gentle. Like she was asking to be let in. I froze. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It read, "Why did you leave me?" My chest felt cold. I sat on the floor, breathing hard. Then, silence. No more tapping. No more lights. The rest of the night passed quietly. In the morning, I found something in the backyard. A photo. It was old. Faded. Me, as a kid. Sitting on that very porch. And behind me was a woman. Not my mom. But she looked just like the figure from last night. I don't know who she is. But I've never seen that photo before. I keep it in a drawer now. I don't look at it. But some nights, when the wind is strong, I still see the light. Still flickering. Still waiting. And I wonder, was she ever really gone? Have you ever seen something at night that felt like it wanted you to remember it? What do you think the light means? I moved to Willow Bend after my wife passed away. It was a small town in Montana. Quiet. Cold. Just the kind of place I needed. My name is Chris. I used to live in a big city. But after Emily died, the noise became too much. So I left everything behind. I found an old house at the edge of town. It had creaky floors, dusty windows, and a porch that faced the woods. It felt peaceful at first. People in town were kind. They waved. But no one got too close. That was fine with me. I wasn't ready to talk much anyway. Every night, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a cup of tea. The air smelled like pine and smoke. The streetlight across the road flickered sometimes. It made this soft buzzing sound. On some nights, it blinked once, twice, then stayed off. Then, just as quickly, it would flash back on. I figured it was faulty wiring. But it always made me pause. One night in late October, it snowed a little. Thin flakes danced under the streetlight. I was scrolling on my phone, just trying to pass time. Suddenly, the screen turned black. No warning. No shutdown. Just black. I tapped it, confused. Battery was full. Then I heard a soft tap-tap on the window beside me. I turned quickly. Nothing there. Just fog on the glass from the cold. I went inside. Tried to plug my phone in. It stayed off. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house creaked more than usual. The wind whistled through the cracks in the wood. Around 2 a.m., I got up and looked outside. The streetlight was off again. But something stood beneath it. It looked like a man. Still. Too still. He didn't move. Didn't look around. Just stood facing my house. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe I was dreaming. I stepped back, turned on the porch light. When I looked again, he was gone. The next day, I asked my neighbor, Jake, if he saw anything. He just shook his head. You know, he said, that streetlight's been weird for years. Kids say they see shadows under it sometimes. I laughed, trying to act normal. But I felt a chill that didn't come from the wind. That night, I kept all the lights on. I didn't sit on the porch. But I peeked through the curtains. The streetlight flickered again. Then went out. I stared at it for a while. This time, no shadow. No man. Just fog and the sound of wind in the trees. Then my phone lit up on the table. It had been dead for 2 days. The screen glowed white. A single message appeared. Come outside. I dropped the phone. The light shut off. I didn't sleep at all. By morning, I convinced myself it was stress. Maybe I was imagining things. I went into town and bought a new phone. I stayed out most of the day. That night, I took a sleeping pill and went to bed early. But around 1 a.m., I woke up. There was tapping again. But not on the window. This time, it was on the front door. 3 slow knocks. I grabbed my flashlight and crept toward the door. I didn't open it. I just stood there. Listening. Then, nothing. Just as I turned to go back to bed. The porch light flicked on. I froze. Then the power went out. Everything went dark. My flashlight clicked on. I aimed it at the window. He was back. Standing under the streetlight. This time, his head was tilted. His mouth slightly open. His eyes, if that's what they were, glowed a dull gray. Like wet ash. I stepped back and tripped on the rug. When I stood up, the power was back. The lights were on. The porch light too. But the man was gone. The next morning, I packed a bag. I called my cousin in Idaho. "I think I need to come stay with you a few days," I said. He didn't ask questions. Just said yes. I left Willow Bend that afternoon. I haven't been back since. Sometimes I wonder if I imagined it all. But then I remember the last thing I saw on that phone. After the message come outside, another one appeared just before the power came back. It said, "You're not alone." I never told anyone that part. Now, when I see a flickering streetlight, I don't stop walking. I don't look around. I just keep going. My name is Chris. I live in a quiet town called Pine Hollow. It's the kind of place where people wave at each other and dogs bark at every car. I grew up here. Moved back after my wife passed away last fall. The house felt too big after she was gone, but it was home. It was late October. The air was cold, and the leaves had started to fall. Every night, the wind would shake the windows, and the trees would tap against the glass. I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. Most nights, I just sat on the porch with a cup of coffee and watched the street. There's an old streetlight across from my house. It flickers sometimes. Just one little bulb on a crooked pole. My wife used to say it reminded her of fireflies. After she passed, that flickering light made the nights feel lonelier. One night, around 10 p.m., I was scrolling on my phone when I heard a soft knock. I froze. It wasn't loud, just 3 light taps on the porch railing. I stepped outside and looked around. No one was there. But the streetlight was flickering faster than usual. Buzzing, almost. I watched it for a bit, but nothing happened. I told myself it was just the wind and went back inside. The next night, it happened again. Same soft knock. Same flickering light. No one around. By the third night, I was starting to feel nervous. I started locking the door even when I was home. I kept the porch light on and left my phone off. The knocks came anyway. One night, I opened the door as soon as I heard the knock. Still no one. But this time, the rocking chair on my porch was moving. Just a little. Back and forth. I hadn't sat in it in weeks. I stared at it, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. That's when I noticed something new. A small, dark shape near the streetlight. It was standing still. Too still. I stepped down from the porch to get a better look. The shape didn't move. My heart started beating faster. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. Then the light went out. Total darkness. The shape disappeared. I ran back inside and locked the door. My hands were shaking. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I checked the porch. Nothing strange. But the chair was moved. It was facing the door now. That wasn't how I left it. I tried to convince myself I was just tired. Maybe I was imagining things. But that night, something changed. The knocks came again. This time, there were 5. Loud. Sharp. Not gentle like before. I didn't open the door. I stood behind it and listened. Silence. Then I heard breathing. Soft, raspy breathing. Right outside the door. I backed away slowly. My phone was on the table. I grabbed it and turned on the flashlight. When I shined it through the peephole, I saw nothing. No one was there. But when I opened the door later, the chair was gone. Just gone. I didn't understand. It was heavy. No one could have moved it that fast. not without making a sound. I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling someone. The police. A friend. But what would I even say? There's something weird with my porch light? A chair disappeared? They'd think I was losing it. The next night, I stayed inside. I didn't go near the porch. I turned off all the lights and stayed in bed with the TV on. Around midnight, I heard a voice. It was a whisper. Soft, from outside. Chris. I froze. It was my wife's voice. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. I turned down the TV. The whisper came again. Chris. It was clearer now. Closer. I stood up and walked to the window. Pulled the curtain just a little. The porch light was on. And there she was. Standing under it. Smiling. It wasn't her. I knew it wasn't. Her hair was wrong. Her smile was too wide. Her head tilted like a puppet. She raised one hand. In it, she held the rocking chair. Lifted it with one hand like it weighed nothing. Then the light went out again. I stepped back. My knees gave out. I crawled to the corner of the room and waited. I didn't sleep at all. The next morning, there was no sign of the chair. But a note had been slipped under the door. Just one sentence written in black marker. It's not the light that flickers. It's who stands beneath it. I don't sit on the porch anymore. I moved my bed into the living room. I keep all the lights on at night. I haven't seen her again, but I still hear the knocks. Always 5 of them. Right after the wind stops. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I hear her voice again. Soft. Kind. Chris. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. My name is Chris. I live alone in a small town called Coldwater, out in upstate New York. It's one of those places where everyone knows your name, but the streets still feel empty at night. I moved back here after my wife passed away last fall. Cancer. Quick and quiet. Some nights I still reach for her in bed before I remember she's gone. I took a job as the night watchman for the town's water plant. It's a boring job. But it gives me time to think. Sometimes too much time. The plant is just outside town. Old building. Metal pipes everywhere. A big fence keeps people out. Or keeps something in. I try not to think about that. One night in late October, I noticed something strange. It was cold. The kind of cold that gets in your bones. Fog rolled in thick across the road. My flashlight barely cut through it. I heard a low hum coming from the pipes. That wasn't unusual. But then my phone buzzed. I pulled it out. No messages. No calls. Just a screen full of static. I frowned. Old phone, maybe? I turned it off and on. Still static. Then the lights above me flickered. Just once. Then again. I laughed a little. Old wiring, I told myself. But something felt off. I walked the perimeter, like I always do. Boots crunching gravel. Cold wind against my face. The gate was locked. The tools were in place. Nothing missing. But near the back wall, I saw footprints. Bare feet. No shoes. No socks. Just pale, wet prints on the concrete. They led from the far gate toward the side of the building. but no prints going back. I followed them. They stopped at the old storage shed. The door creaked open as I touched it. Inside, nothing but darkness. The smell hit me first, wet dirt and something sweet. Like rotting flowers. I stepped back. That shed hadn't been used in years. I locked it. Wrote a note to check again in the morning. Tried to forget it. The next night, the lights flickered again. My phone buzzed again. Same static. But now, the camera feed in the control room showed movement. A shape. A shadow. Walking past the main hallway. I froze. Nobody else should be here. I checked the building. Every room. Nothing. Then I checked the footage again. No shadow. Like it never happened. I told myself I was tired. I hadn't been sleeping much. I'd been having weird dreams too. Dreams where I heard my wife calling me from outside the window. But when I looked, she wasn't there. On the third night, I found something under my chair in the control room. A note. Folded neatly. No name. I opened it slowly. Inside, in shaky writing, were the words, "Stop looking." That's when I stopped breathing for a second. I hadn't told anyone about the footsteps. Or the shadow. Or the dreams. I stepped outside for air. The night was too quiet. The trees didn't move. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. And then I saw her. A woman. Standing under the streetlight by the plant entrance. Long blonde hair. White dress. It looked like her. My wife. But it couldn't be. I took a step forward. She didn't move. I took another step. Still, she stood. Head tilted slightly. Watching me. Then the light above her blinked. Just once. And she was gone. I ran. All the way to where she had been. Nothing. No footprints. No sound. Just cold air and fog. That was the last night I worked there. I quit the next morning. I told the manager I needed time. That I wasn't feeling right. He didn't ask questions. Now, I sit on my porch every night. Phone turned off. Lights kept low. But sometimes, when the wind picks up, I still see the fog creep in from the trees. Sometimes, my phone turns itself on and buzzes once. Sometimes, I look down the street and see someone standing beneath the flickering light. And sometimes, I think I hear her voice. Calling me back. My name is Jake. I'm a deputy in a small town called Cold Creek. It's one of those places where everyone waves at each other. Nothing big ever happens here. Or at least, that's what we used to think. After my dad died last winter, I started working more night shifts. It helped keep my mind busy. The house felt too quiet. Too heavy. My mom moved in with my sister after the funeral, so it was just me now. That winter was the coldest we'd had in years. The streets were always covered in snow. The wind felt like it could cut right through your coat. And on some nights, the fog was so thick, you could barely see the streetlights. One night, I was driving down Sycamore Road, a street near the edge of town. Old houses sat far apart, most of them empty now. Some had for sale signs that had been there for years. There was one house in particular. A white two-story with peeling paint and a broken porch swing. People said it used to belong to a schoolteacher who vanished one winter night, decades ago. No one ever moved in after that. As I passed the house, I noticed something strange. The upstairs window was glowing. It wasn't bright, just a soft blue light. Almost like the glow from a TV screen. I slowed down and stopped my patrol car. I stared at the window. There were no footprints in the snow leading up to the house. No tire tracks. Just that strange, cold light. I radioed in that I was checking on something, then stepped out. The air smelled like smoke and frozen earth. My boots crunched softly on the snow as I walked toward the porch. The old boards creaked under my weight. The wind made the swing squeak like someone was sitting there. I knocked on the front door. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I tried the doorknob. It was unlocked. The door creaked open. The air inside was colder than outside. I stepped into a dark hallway. The wallpaper was peeling. The floor was covered in dust. But the strange thing? It looked like someone had been walking through it recently. There were fresh footprints leading to the staircase. I followed them slowly. My flashlight flickered for a second, which made my heart race. I took a deep breath and kept going. At the top of the stairs, I turned toward the room with the glowing light. The door was open. The glow filled the hallway. I stepped inside. There was no TV. No lamp. Just a mirror on the wall. It was tall, with a wooden frame. Looked old, maybe antique. The glow was coming from it. That's when I noticed something even stranger. The reflection in the mirror didn't match the room. Behind me, the hallway was dark. But in the mirror, there was a figure. Standing at the end of the hallway. Still. Silent. I spun around. Nothing was there. I looked back into the mirror. The figure was closer now. I couldn't see its face. Just a tall, dark shape. It looked like it was wearing an old coat or cloak. Its head was tilted slightly, like it was listening. I felt my chest tighten. I took a step back. The floor creaked loudly. The figure in the mirror moved again. Closer. I turned and ran. Down the stairs. Out the door. Back into the cold. I didn't stop until I was back in my cruiser with the door locked. My hands were shaking. I looked up at the window. The light was gone. The house was dark. I didn't tell anyone at first. Who would believe me? But I started asking around town. Quietly. Carefully. An older man at the diner told me his cousin used to live in that house. Said the mirror had always been there. That it wasn't a regular mirror. He said people saw things in it. Things that weren't there. People that weren't alive anymore. I asked what happened to his cousin. He just shook his head and said, she stopped coming out of her room. I went back the next day. With backup. But the mirror was gone. Just dust and a faded outline on the wall. No footprints. No glow. No sign of the figure. It was like it never happened. I still drive past that house on night patrol. I try not to look at the window. But sometimes, I still see that soft, blue light. Just for a second. My name is Jake. I grew up in a small town called Elmwood. Not much happens here. It's quiet. The kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked. But I remember one autumn when that changed. It was the year after my dad passed away. He had a heart attack in his sleep. I was 15. After that, I didn't like going home early. The house felt too empty. Too quiet. My mom tried to stay strong, but I could see how tired she looked. I started walking around the neighborhood at night. It helped me clear my head. Most nights, I took the same path down Maple Street, past the bakery, then a left on Willow Lane. Willow Lane was always strange. There was a street light halfway down that never worked right. It would flicker on and off like it couldn't decide what it wanted. Sometimes it stayed dark for days. Sometimes it blinked like it was trying to say something. People joked it was haunted. One night, in early November, I was walking that way. The wind was cold. Leaves scraped across the sidewalk like tiny claws. I had my hoodie pulled tight. My hands were stuffed deep in my pockets. I passed the old Cooper house. It had been empty for years. The windows were boarded. The paint peeled like dry skin. As I walked by, I thought I heard a sound. Like footsteps. But when I looked, no one was there. I told myself it was just the wind or a squirrel. I kept walking. When I got to the flickering light, I stopped. It was on, but just barely. It buzzed softly. I could see my breath in the air. The light blinked once. Then twice. Then stayed off. Total darkness. Then I felt it. Someone was behind me. I turned fast, but nothing was there. Just trees, fog, and the whisper of wind. I took a step forward. That's when I saw the shadow. It was standing at the edge of the light, where the pavement cracked. Tall. Still. Too still. It didn't move like a person. It didn't breathe. It didn't sway. I blinked. It was gone. I didn't run. I don't know why. I just kept walking, faster this time, heart pounding in my ears. When I got home, I told myself I imagined it. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe grief was playing tricks on me. But that wasn't the only night. The next few days, things started happening. Lights in our house would flicker when I walked past. My phone glitched. It sent messages I didn't type. One of them just said, "Come back." At first, I laughed. I thought maybe my friend Chris was playing a joke. But he swore he wasn't. One night, my mom asked if I'd left the front door open. I hadn't. She said she heard it creak, like someone came in. But when she checked, no one was there. Then came the whispers. At night, when I tried to sleep, I'd hear soft voices in my room. Too quiet to understand. But I could feel them. Like breath on my neck. Like cold fingers brushing my blanket. I stopped sleeping well. Then one day, I found an old photo under my bed. I hadn't seen it before. It was black and white. A picture of a boy standing under the Willow Lane streetlight. The light was off in the picture, but the boy's eyes, they seemed to glow. There was a date on the back, October 30th, 1961. I showed it to my mom. Her face turned pale. She said a boy went missing that year. Last seen walking home from a Halloween party. No one ever found him. His name was Daniel. The next night, I went back to Willow Lane. I needed answers. I needed to know if I was going crazy. The wind was stronger this time. It howled through the trees like it was warning me. I stood under the flickering light. It buzzed once. Then went dead. Silence. I whispered, "Daniel?" Nothing. Then the shadow stepped out. From the fog. From the dark. It moved toward me. Not walking. Floating. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. Then, just as suddenly, it was gone. Like it melted into the night. I ran all the way home. I didn't look back. After that night, the streetlight stopped flickering. It stayed off. My phone stopped glitching. The whispers faded. But I still think about that boy. I still have the photo. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't run. Was he trying to talk to me? Was he trying to tell me what happened to him? I don't walk Willow Lane anymore. Not at night. Sometimes I stare at that photo and think, why me? Why then? Maybe the shadow just wanted someone to remember. Or maybe it's still waiting. What do you think happened next? Have you ever felt like something was near you, even when no one was there? My name is Jake. I live in a small town called Willow Creek. It's quiet here. Too quiet sometimes. I used to live here with my wife, Emily. She passed away last year. Cancer. Since then, things have felt empty. The house creaks more now. The nights feel longer. I work as a night officer. Just me and my patrol car. Driving around dark roads while everyone sleeps. Some nights, I park near the old Miller house. It's been empty for years. Everyone says it's haunted. I never believed in that stuff. The Miller house is at the edge of town. It's big, made of old wood, with broken windows and a porch that sags in the middle. The mailbox still has their name on it. Nobody ever takes it down. Last October, near Halloween, I was working a shift during a storm. The wind was strong. Leaves blew across the road. The sky was full of dark clouds. Rain came and went. That's when I saw it. The porch light of the Miller house flickered on. It was strange. No one lived there. Power should have been cut years ago. I pulled over and sat for a minute. Maybe it was lightning. Maybe my eyes were tired. Then I saw someone move behind one of the upstairs windows. I got out of my car. The cold wind hit my face. My boots crunched on wet gravel as I walked up the path. The porch groaned under my weight. Hello? I called out. No answer. The front door was slightly open. Just a crack. Enough to see inside. The hallway was dark. Dust floated in the air. I stepped in. The floor was soft with rot. Every step creaked. I called out again. Anyone in here? This is Officer Turner. Still no answer. Then I heard something. A soft voice. A whisper. It said my name. Jake. I froze. My hand moved to my flashlight. I turned it on. The light hit the stairs. They looked steep. Dangerous. But the sound came from upstairs. I climbed slowly. Each step made a loud sound. I reached the top and looked down the hallway. There were 5 doors. All closed. One door creaked open on its own. Inside was a child's bedroom. Dusty toys on the floor. A small bed with a broken leg. The air smelled old. Like wet wood and something else, burnt wires? I stepped in. The walls had drawings. Crayon pictures of a house. A family. And a man with black eyes. I looked closer. Every picture had him in it. Then the closet door creaked. I turned to it. My heart beat faster. The light shook in my hand. I reached for the handle. And then, a phone rang. Not mine. It came from inside the closet. I opened the door slowly. Inside was an old rotary phone. Not plugged in. Still ringing. I picked it up. My hand trembled. I said, "Hello?" Static. Then a voice. A whisper. "You left her." I dropped the phone. The air went cold. I could see my breath. I turned to leave, and there, in the mirror across the room, I saw a figure. A man. Tall. Wearing gray. No eyes. Just black, empty sockets. But when I turned around, he was gone. I ran out of the room. Down the stairs. The house felt alive. Like it was watching me. As I reached the front door, it slammed shut in my face. I pushed it. It wouldn't move. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming down the stairs. I turned around, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing. Then the radio on my shoulder crackled. "Jake," it said. It wasn't my dispatcher. It was Emily's voice. "You left me alone," it whispered. I screamed. The door finally gave way. I stumbled outside, gasping for air. Rain poured down. The porch light flickered one last time, then went out. I got in my car and drove away. Fast. I didn't go back. I told the chief someone broke in. He said the house has no power, no phone line, no records of anyone entering. They checked. Found nothing. I haven't told anyone what really happened. Not until now. Last night, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp. Just my name. Inside was a crayon drawing. It was me. Standing next to a man with black eyes. And behind us, the Miller house. I burned the picture. But I don't sleep much anymore. Sometimes, when the wind howls through town, I hear her voice again. Calling me. From the upstairs window. And the porch light? It's still flickering. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. My name is Jake. I've lived in Silver Pines, Vermont, my whole life. It's a quiet town. Small. Peaceful. Folks here know your name, and secrets don't stay hidden for long. Last year, my wife passed away. Cancer. It was quick. Too quick. After she died, I moved out of our house and rented a small cabin on the edge of town. Just needed space. Quiet. The cabin was old. Wood creaked when I walked. The windows rattled when wind blew. There was a streetlight just across the road. It flickered at night. Always flickered. I didn't think much of it. Streetlights do that sometimes, right? It was mid-October. Leaves covered the ground. The air smelled like wet soil and smoke from fireplaces. It rained almost every evening. Cold, soft rain. One night, I sat by the window with coffee. I was scrolling through photos of my wife on my phone. The signal was weak. Pages took forever to load. That's when the light across the road blinked out. Then came back. Then went out again. But this time, I saw something. A shadow. Someone was standing under the light. They didn't move. Just stood there. I squinted, trying to make out the face. But I couldn't. It was too dark. Too far. I stepped onto the porch. Hello? I called. The figure didn't answer. Didn't move. Just stood under that light. Then the streetlight blinked off. When it blinked back on, the figure was gone. I stood there for a moment, waiting. But the road was empty. I told myself it was my eyes playing tricks. Grief does that. Makes you see things. Feel things. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I thought about that figure. The next evening, I came home late from the grocery store. As I pulled into the driveway, my headlights lit up the streetlight. It flickered. And there, under it, the figure again. Same spot. Same shape. Still. Watching. But this time, it felt closer. I didn't get out of my truck. I just sat there, staring. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. One new text. Why did you leave her alone? My blood ran cold. I looked back up. The figure was gone. I jumped out of the truck and ran across the road. No one there. Just fog. Just silence. I blocked the number. Went inside. Tried to tell myself it was a prank. But the next night, it got worse. Around midnight, my phone started playing music on its own. Old music. A love song I hadn't listened to since my wedding. My phone screen flickered. Then the same message appeared again. Why did you leave her alone? I dropped the phone. Suddenly, I heard footsteps on the porch. I froze. Then, knock. Just one. Slow. Heavy. I grabbed the bat from beside my door and opened it fast. Nobody there. Just the flickering streetlight. But on the porch floor was a photo. A picture of me and my wife. But it had been torn. She was gone from the frame. Just me. Alone. I didn't know how to explain it. I hadn't seen that photo in months. I called the police. Officer Reynolds came by. Searched the area. Found nothing. He said it was probably just kids messing with me. That I should get a camera. But I knew it wasn't kids. The next morning, I checked my phone again. A new message. She's cold. I didn't go to work that day. Instead, I drove to the cemetery. Her grave was covered in leaves. Wet and forgotten. I cleaned it. Sat by her side. Talked to her. Told her I was sorry. That I missed her. That night, the streetlight didn't flicker. No shadows. No messages. For a while, things felt normal. I started sleeping better. Even smiled again once or twice. But about a week later, it came back. A louder knock. This time, 3 of them. Boom. 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 When I opened the door, there she was. My wife. Or something that looked like her. But wrong. Her head tilted to one side. Her eyes hollow. Her smile too wide. She didn't speak. Just stared. Then whispered. You left me. She stepped backward into the fog. And vanished. I never saw her again. But every night, the streetlight flickers. And sometimes, I hear knocking. And sometimes, I still get those texts. It was late October in a quiet town called Silver Hollow. The trees had lost most of their leaves. The air smelled like wet dirt and firewood. Every evening, fog rolled in from the hills. The streets were empty after dark. Chris lived alone in a small blue house at the edge of town. He had moved back after his dad passed away. He needed time to think. Time to breathe. The house had once felt warm, filled with laughter. Now it was just quiet. Too quiet. Chris worked from home. He didn't go out much. His friends had moved away. His phone was his only connection to the world. He would scroll through apps late at night, even when his eyes hurt. One evening, he sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around him. The wind was sharp. The old streetlight in front of the house flickered again. It had done that for weeks. The city said they'd fix it. They never did. Chris looked up from his phone. There was a sound. A soft creak. Like a swing moving in the wind. But he didn't have a swing. He stood up and stepped off the porch. The noise stopped. He shook his head and went inside. That night, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit up the screen. It said, "I see you." Chris froze. He waited for another text. Nothing came. He turned his phone off and went to bed. The next night, it happened again. Buzz. "Why did you leave?" He didn't reply. He deleted the message. But it kept happening. Every night, around the same time. Always a new number. Always the same tone. Quiet. Cold. Like someone whispering through wires. Then the pictures started. The first one showed his house, his porch, taken from the road. The second one showed his bedroom window, taken from the backyard. The third one was taken from inside his house. Chris felt sick. He checked all the locks. All the windows. Everything was shut tight. He couldn't sleep. He called the police. A young officer named Megan came by. She was kind but didn't seem worried. "Probably a prank," she said. "Kids messing around. It's Halloween season, after all." Chris nodded, but deep down, he didn't believe that. Something felt wrong. That night, he slept with the lights on. He woke up at 3:13 a.m. to a sound. Tap. 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 It was coming from the hallway. Chris sat up, heart pounding. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight. The tapping stopped. He stepped into the hallway. The wooden floor creaked under his feet. Cold air brushed his neck. The front door was wide open. He hadn't opened it. Outside, the streetlight flickered again. And under it, someone stood there. They were tall. Dressed in black. No face, just shadows where a face should be. Chris froze. The figure didn't move. It didn't walk away. It didn't come closer. It just stood there, under the light, flickering in and out like a broken film. Chris shut the door and locked every bolt. He didn't sleep that night. In the morning, he checked the porch. Nothing. No footprints. No marks. Just fog and silence. He started staying with his cousin across town. He didn't tell her everything. Just said the house gave him weird vibes. But even at his cousin's house, the messages returned. Buzz. You can't run. Buzz. You left him alone. Chris broke down. He finally told Megan everything. The photos. The messages. The figure in the night. She listened this time. She promised to check the phone records and drive by his house at night. That evening, she called him. "Hey, I drove past your place just now," she said. "Everything looks normal." Chris felt relieved. But then she added something. "There's just one thing though. The porch light was on." "But I thought you said it was broken?" "I didn't turn it on," Chris whispered. Silence. "I'll go back," she said, and the line went dead. Chris waited. And waited. She didn't call back. He tried to reach her. No answer. Then his phone buzzed again. A photo. It was Megan's patrol car. Parked outside his house. The porch light glowed behind it. And the shadow figure stood on the porch. Chris ran out of his cousin's house, jumped into his car, and sped across town. When he reached his house, the patrol car was still there. But Megan wasn't. He called dispatch. They sent backup. No sign of Megan. No sign of a break-in. But her body cam? It was found on the ground, still recording. The last frame? Her flashlight hitting the shadow figure on the porch. And then, static. Chris left town the next day. He sold the house for cheap. He doesn't talk about what happened to anyone, not really. But sometimes, when the wind gets cold and the leaves rattle against the windows, he thinks about that figure. And the messages. And Megan. And he wonders. What do you think happened next? Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even when you were alone? Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. I used to live on Finley Street. It's a quiet road in a small town called Maple Hollow, the kind of place where people leave their doors unlocked and the streetlights buzz louder than the traffic. After my divorce, I rented a small house at the far end of the street. It was cheap and kind of run down, but it had a porch and a view of the woods. That's all I wanted, peace and quiet. The house had this one big window facing the street. I didn't think much of it at first. But over time, it started to bother me. The glass was old. You could hear the wind whistle through the cracks on cold nights. It creaked sometimes, too, especially when it rained. I worked late shifts at the diner, so most nights I didn't get home until after midnight. I'd come back, make a cup of tea, and sit on the couch near that big window, watching the street. It helped me calm down. Being alone was hard. After the divorce, I felt like I had nothing. My phone barely rang. I stopped checking social media. Too many memories. Too many smiles that weren't mine anymore. That's when the strange stuff began. The first night, I noticed a light flicker outside. I thought it was just the street lamp. But it wasn't. It was like someone had a flashlight, pointing it toward the house, then turning it off. I stood up and looked, but the street was empty. Just fog and the soft hum of bugs. A few nights later, I saw it again. But this time, it stayed longer. A light. Then a shadow. It passed in front of the window, slow, like someone walking by. But there were no footsteps. Just the creak of the window and the sound of the old floor groaning under my feet. I stepped outside onto the porch. Cold wind brushed against my arms. The street was still empty. I told myself it was stress. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I wanted someone to be there, even if it scared me. But things kept getting stranger. One night, I came home and found the front door slightly open. Just a crack. I always lock it. Always. I even triple check. Inside, nothing was missing. But the smell was wrong. Like smoke and wet leaves. Like something old. I checked every room. Empty. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch with the lights on and the TV playing something I didn't watch. The window creaked again. The wind howled. Then my phone buzzed. No name. No number. Just a message. We see you. I stared at the screen. My hands shook. I turned the phone off. Took the battery out. Just in case. I didn't turn it back on for days. That weekend, I boarded up the window. I nailed the boards tight. No more watching. No more being watched. But it didn't help. Because the tapping started. At first, I thought it was the house settling. But it was too steady. Tap. 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 Always at 3:13 a.m. Always from the window. Even though it was boarded shut. The tapping came every night. Soft. Careful. Like fingers. I started sleeping in the hallway. Away from the glass. With a bat by my side. One night, I snapped. I pulled the boards off and looked out. Nothing. Just fog. And a single red balloon tied to the porch rail. I didn't sleep after that. Not for days. Then one night, it stopped. No tapping. No lights. No messages. I thought maybe it was over. But the next morning, I found muddy footprints outside the window. Bare feet. Small. Like a child's. They circled the house. Again and again. That was it. I packed a bag and left. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't look back. The house still stands at the end of Finley Street. The boards are gone. The window is clear. Sometimes I drive by. And when I do, I see the reflection of someone standing inside. Not moving. Just watching. I moved to Elk Hollow after my mom passed. It's a quiet town in upstate New York, surrounded by hills and old barns. People wave at you. The diner still sells coffee for $1. I thought it would help me feel better. But grief doesn't care where you live. I rented a small farmhouse on the edge of town. It was old, but cozy. The kind with creaky floors, yellow porch lights, and cold air that slips through the windows at night. The wind whistled through the trees, and sometimes I'd hear the wooden swing creak even when nothing touched it. It was autumn when it happened. The leaves were orange and brown. The air smelled like smoke and wet earth. Halloween was coming, but kids around here didn't trick or treat on my road. Too far out. I had been feeling low that day. The silence in the house felt heavier than usual. I made tea and sat on the porch, watching the fog roll down the hills. I wasn't expecting anything. But then I saw a light. It was faint. Just a small flicker behind the barn in the backyard. At first, I thought maybe it was my neighbor. Their property touches the edge of mine, and sometimes they cut through to check their fences. But when I called out, no one answered. The light blinked once, then twice, then went out. I stood up and looked toward the barn. It had been locked since I moved in. The landlord said it was just old tools and scrap wood. I hadn't bothered with it. But now I was curious. I grabbed a flashlight and put on my jacket. The air outside was sharp and cold. My boots crunched on the frosty grass. When I reached the barn door, I paused. The lock was broken. Not old. Broken. The metal was bent, and the chain lay in the dirt. I felt a chill run through my arms, not from the cold. Still, I opened the door. Inside, the air was thick and smelled like rust. The flashlight flickered for a second, then steadied. Dust floated in the beam like tiny ghosts. The barn was quiet. Empty, except for some old chairs, a rake, and a few boxes. Then I saw it. A small lantern sitting in the middle of the floor. It was old, with a cracked glass cover. The flame inside was still burning. I stepped closer. The hair on my arms stood up. I picked up the lantern. It was warm, too warm. Like someone had just lit it. But I was alone. That's when the door slammed shut. I spun around and dropped the lantern. The light went out. My flashlight flickered again. I was in complete darkness. My breath came fast and short. I could hear something. A soft tapping behind me. Like footsteps on wood. I turned the flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. I whispered, "Hello?" No answer. But the tapping continued. Closer now. I backed toward the door and tried to pull it open. It didn't budge. I yanked harder. Still stuck. That's when I saw the shadow. Tall. Thin. Not moving. Just standing between two wooden beams near the back. My flashlight started to dim. The batteries were dying. I froze. Then the shadow moved. Slow at first. Then quicker. It didn't make any sound, but I felt it closer and closer. My chest felt tight. I slammed my hand against the door again, and this time, it flew open. Cold wind rushed in. I ran. I didn't stop until I was inside the house, slamming the door behind me and locking it. My heart was pounding. I turned on every light and sat on the couch, flashlight still in hand. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I went out to the barn. The lantern was gone. So was the lock. I called the landlord and asked if anyone had been out to the property. He said no. I told him what happened. He went quiet for a moment, then said, "I probably should have told you. The last tenant, she complained about someone sneaking around the barn at night. But we never found anyone. She left after just 3 months." That was all he said. I stayed another 2 weeks, but I didn't feel safe anymore. Every night after that, I heard footsteps on the porch. Just 1 or 2. Always around 3 a.m. I'd get up and check, but no one was ever there. Sometimes, when I looked out the window, I thought I saw a light behind the barn. Just a flicker. Always gone by the time I blinked. Eventually, I packed my things and left. Moved in with my cousin in Pennsylvania. I still drive through Elk Hollow sometimes, just passing through. But I don't stop. I don't look toward that barn. I've never told anyone else this. Not really. People like to explain things away. You were tired. It was your imagination. But grief doesn't make up shadows. And lanterns don't light themselves. So now I'll ask you. What do you think was in that barn? And if you had seen that light, would you have gone inside? I used to think Bell Creek was the safest place on earth. It's a small town in northern Missouri. Quiet. Cold most of the year. The kind of place where everyone waves and church bells still ring on Sundays. I've lived here all my life. So did my wife, Emma, until she passed away last fall. Since then, the house has felt too big. Too quiet. To pass time, I started walking near the woods behind our property. Bell Creek runs through them. It's more of a trickle than a river, really. But it's peaceful. Especially in autumn, when the trees turn red and the fog rolls in low. That's where I saw her. It was a Tuesday morning. Late October. The sky was gray and the air had that sharp bite that says winter's coming soon. I had my hands in my jacket pockets and was heading down the dirt path near the creek when I noticed something strange. There was a girl standing by the water. She was wearing a white dress, thin and out of place for the cold. Her back was to me. Long black hair, tangled like it hadn't been brushed in days. She stood perfectly still. Too still. I called out. "Hey, are you okay?" She didn't answer. Didn't move. I stepped closer, maybe 20 feet away now. The wind blew through the trees, and I noticed something else. There were no footprints around her. The ground was soft. Wet. But she hadn't left a single print. I blinked. Just once. She was gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that girl. Maybe she was in trouble. Maybe I'd imagined her. Grief messes with your head, they say. I tried telling myself that. But then my phone buzzed at 2:13 a.m. No message. Just a buzz. I checked it, nothing there. No call. No alert. Just that hollow vibration. And then it happened again. Another buzz. Still no message. Then my screen lit up. Are you cold? I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking. The message vanished. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I told myself it was a prank. Maybe some kind of scam. Maybe a glitch. I cleared my messages and shut the phone off. I went back to Bell Creek. I needed answers. The fog was thick that morning. The sun barely touched the tree line. And there she was again. Same spot. Same dress. Still facing the water. I didn't call out this time. I just watched. Then, slowly, she turned around. Her eyes were pitch black. No whites. No iris. Just black. And her mouth, it stretched wider than it should have. But she didn't scream. She whispered. Come in. I ran. Branches slapped my face as I bolted through the trees. My breath clouded in front of me. My feet pounded the trail until I made it home and locked every door behind me. That night, I heard scratching. It came from the back door. Soft at first. Then faster. Desperate. I peeked through the curtain. Nothing. Then I saw the message carved into the wood outside. Come in. I told the sheriff the next day. His name's Mike. Good man. I'd coached his son's baseball team years ago. He didn't laugh when I told him. He just nodded, slow and tired. You've seen her, too, he said. What do you mean? Bell Creek's got a story. Old one. From the 40s. He leaned back and looked out the window. They say a girl drowned there. Her dad never found her. Some think he went mad looking. Others say he found her and buried her somewhere by the bank. Doesn't matter. That creek's not right. People have seen her. Some get texts. Some get dreams. Most don't come back to the woods. I asked what I should do. He looked me in the eye. Don't answer her. Don't follow. And whatever happens, don't go near the water. I tried to forget again. Tried to move on. But it's hard when your phone buzzes every night at 2:13. Are you cold? I'm still here. Come in. One night, I left the phone outside. It still buzzed. No battery. No signal. Still buzzed. That's when I knew I had to leave. I packed a bag. Booked a cheap motel 3 hours south. Drove until I couldn't see pine trees anymore. The first night in the motel, I slept. First good sleep in weeks. But when I woke up, there was a puddle beside the bed. And the faint scent of the creek water. They say grief plays tricks. That it makes the walls breathe and shadows stretch. Maybe that's true. But I know what I saw. And I know what followed me. She wasn't just some spirit trapped in Bell Creek. She found a way out. And now I hear the whisper again, every night. Come in. It happened on the edge of fall, just before the first frost. The kind of night where the air smells like old leaves and smoke from distant chimneys. My name's Mark. I'm a mechanic in a little town called Brook Hollow. Quiet place. 2 gas stations, 1 diner, and not much else. Most people here leave their doors unlocked. I live alone. My wife, Hannah, passed away last winter. Cancer. It still feels strange coming home to an empty house. Some nights, I sleep on the couch with the TV playing low, just so it doesn't feel so quiet. This story starts on a Thursday night. I had stayed late at the shop, fixing up an old Chevy that barely held itself together. It was nearly 11 p.m. when I finally locked up and stepped outside. The wind had picked up, sharp and dry. My breath fogged in the air. As I walked to my truck, I noticed something odd. Across the street, under the broken streetlight, someone was standing. A little girl. She was wearing a white dress, no shoes. Just standing there, staring at my shop. I paused, keys in hand. "Hey," I called out. "You okay?" She didn't move. The streetlight flickered once, then went dark completely. When the light came back on, just a second later, she was gone. I felt my chest tighten. I looked around, even walked across the road. Nothing. No footprints in the gravel. No sound. I told myself I was tired. Grief messes with your head, you know? I got in my truck and went home. Made some tea. Tried to sleep. Around 3 a.m., I woke up to a soft tapping sound. I sat up. It was coming from the back door. Not knocking. Tapping. Like little fingers on glass. I walked through the kitchen, flipped on the light, and peeked through the curtains. No one was there. But the glass door had a handprint. Small. Wet. Like a child's. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next day, I asked around town if anyone was missing a child. Nobody had heard anything. I even drove out to the sheriff's office. Old Sheriff Carter just nodded and said, "Strange things come around this time of year. Be careful, Mark." Not exactly what I wanted to hear. That night, I left the porch light on. Kept all the curtains shut. Locked every door. At 2:17 a.m., I woke up again. But this time, it wasn't tapping. It was a voice. A soft voice. Just outside my bedroom window. "Let me in." I froze. The voice came again. "Please. I'm cold." I sat up and reached for the bat I kept by the nightstand. I didn't look out the window. I couldn't. The next morning, there was frost on the grass. And 2 small footprints outside my window. Bare feet. I didn't go to work that day. I stayed home. Boarded up the window. Lit candles. I found my wife's old Bible and kept it close. That night, everything was still. No sounds. No voice. But at 3:13 a.m., every light in the house went off at once. Total darkness. Then, static. My old radio, the one in the garage, turned on by itself. Just static. No station. No music. I stepped out into the hallway, heart pounding. The static grew louder. And then it changed. A voice, buried in the noise. "Why did you leave me?" It was a child's voice. Hurt. Accusing. The radio burst into silence. Then I heard footsteps in the attic. I don't go up there much. Just old boxes. Some of Hannah's things. But now, something was moving up there. Slow. Deliberate. I grabbed the bat, opened the attic door, and climbed the stairs. Each step creaked under my weight. When I reached the top, it was cold. My breath hung in the air. And there, in the corner, was the little girl. Same white dress. Same empty stare. She was holding a picture frame. It was one of Hannah's. It showed us on the porch, smiling. And in the corner, if you looked closely, you could just barely see a child. A girl. But we never had kids. The girl looked at me. No emotion. "Why didn't you come back for me?" she whispered. I blinked. And she was gone. Just the frame. Lying on the floor. I ran out of the attic, heart racing. Stayed in my truck the rest of the night. The next morning, I drove out to the Old Town Records building. Dug through archives. Anything to explain what I saw. I found an old article. In 1996, a couple lived in my house. They had a daughter. 7 years old. She disappeared one night in October. Last seen wearing a white dress. They searched the woods. The lake. Never found her. The couple divorced. Moved away. The house sat empty for years. Until I bought it. I don't know what she wants. Or why she's still here. But sometimes, late at night, I hear the radio click on again. Or I see a small handprint on the back door glass. I keep the Bible close now. And the porch light always stays on. Just in case she decides to come back. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way.